Welcome everybody to a Locksmith Late. My camera is a little out of focus, but don't worry, it will focus again. I'm Jareth Garza with the Locksmith Academy, and today we have a special guest, Andrew Taylor. But first, we're going to introduce our co-hosts. We have Eric Duttweiler. Welcome.
Yo, what's up?
And we have Paul Van Neville.
Hello.
How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good. Let's jump right into it. I'm excited to introduce Andrew Taylor. Andrew Taylor is a myth, a legend. He is a automotive guru, some would say. I paint him as a imperfect perfectionist, and I'm sure he'll have a lot to add to what is to come. So let's introduce Andrew Taylor.
How y'all doing? Thanks for all the fanfare, but I'm just a guy doing my thing.
That's what every legend says, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't met too many.
Why don't we start out by you telling us a little bit about yourself? How long have you been an automotive locksmith, and what do you do?
Okay, well, I originally started locksmithing back in 1980 when I got out of the Army. I was a helicopter mechanic in the Army, but that didn't work too well for me in the Army. Didn't kill anybody, though. But chased down job after job, finally found something that actually could pay, and turned out I loved the job. I apprenticed under Tom Sprouse up in New Jersey for quite a few years. Didn't do a whole lot of automotive stuff up there. Mostly it was all commercial and residential. I mean, I can pin up a Falcon Best without a cheat sheet because we did so many of those stupid things up there. Then I moved down here to Virginia Beach back in 1986. Went to work for a company down here. And very quickly, there was this huge hole in the automotive industry that nobody did automotive locksmithing. And I kind of fell into it, and I fell in love with the work because it's really cool because every car is different. So it's never the same damn thing over and over.
Yeah.
I tell my customers that like every car is a new puzzle to solve.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I love the work. Everybody's sitting there telling me, oh, you got to get into commercial. That's where the real money is. And I'm like, yeah, but I love this stuff. It's cool. I mean, I was cutting my teeth on the Hank Spicer books on the foreign automotive stuff. And every time a call would come in on a car, the first thing I'd do is I'd open up those Hank Spicer books, find out whatever was closest to it, and then try to project onto what might have changed since he wrote the books and go from there.
I want to ask, back in your day, like what was the traditional route of car key origination? Nowadays we have like Leashy, it makes it easy. Nowadays the common locksmith, he doesn't have sight reading capabilities, he doesn't have impressioning skills. From your experience being as old as you are, as gray as you are, like how is it different from yesterday to today?
Well, I mean, most of the time, I could remember a lot of days where basically all I had to do when it was time to go originate a key is I'd jump in my truck, grab my file, grab my vice grips, grab a key blank, walk over to the car, and go do it. And, that was 90% of the work until you got into the GM Saginaw columns. But even there, I had done so many Saginaw columns. At that point, I was getting bored with the damn things, and I started clocking myself.
What's a GM Saginaw, for those who don't know?
Like, for example, a 1987 Chevy Blazer S10.
Okay.
Or an 87 Corvette. Or any of the GMs from 1968 up until 1995. A few of the Dodges even used the Saginaw columns.
Jeep,
American
Jeep as well during the AMC years.
I was just going to say the AMC Jeeps. They also use the Saginaw column. It's pretty much the most common steering column you'll ever find in automotive. If you count all the brands all put together, everybody except Ford used the GM Saginaw column at one point.
What's your best time?
My best time from closed toolbox to closed toolbox. Now you have to understand I carried my clipper, my code book, and key blanks in that box. It was my Saginaw box. So from closed toolbox to closed toolbox, my best time was 7 minutes flat.
Holy shit.
I'm telling you, I was doing 10 to 15 a day. So I was really getting bored. So the only thing to make it interesting was to line everybody up, go to the car, and see how fast I could do it.
So what tip would you have for a new locksmith who is tackling his first Saginaw column? What's a must-have and, something you shouldn't ever forget inside your toolbox?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of important tools that you have to have. I mean, you have to have a good steering wheel puller. You have to have a good lock plate depressor. I mean, those are the two basic tools that you don't normally carry in your truck, along with a 13/16 socket, half-inch drive, ratchet, that kind of thing. But the most important thing you got to remember, and I was just talking to a young buddy of mine recently just about that. I showed him his first Saginaw column a couple years ago, and it scared the living bejesus out of him. And he was like, I ain't never doing another one again today, ever. And just today, he was telling me how much he actually really enjoys them things now because they ain't as tough as he thought it was.
Eric, were you the person that I don't know if it was you a while ago, a Saginaw, you took one apart and you dropped the ball bearings out of it? Or was that Paul?
That was me.
Yeah, that wasn't me.
Have you ever done that?
Stupid race, that plastic piece of junk with the bearings in it. Yeah, when they get old, they do fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. My fastest time. Go ahead, Paul.
I had that happen on one that was telescopic and tilt, and I pulled that on that bearing race, and I hurt them all fall down, and that was the end of that job. I got it back together. The guy was driving home like this.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I have seen on the tilt wheels, as the column gets older, when you take off the lock plate and the column drops down just a little bit, there's another set of race and bearings down at the base of the column
At the very bottom.
that have to line up for it to pull back forward again.
Mm-hmm.
But after that column has a lot of years on it, you get a burr on the shaft that doesn't allow that race and bearings to set back in so that you can pull it up, and you're sitting there fighting to push down on the lock plate and pull up on the shaft, and it doesn't want to go. And sometimes you got to take your foot and you do a little kick at the base of the column and bang on that thing a couple of times to get it to settle in so that it pops forward again so that you can actually get everybody back together.
I'm gonna jump in. You saved my ass. You saved my ass on a Cadillac Eldorado. Oh God, it was midsummer, and I had pulled the wheel. I had done everything. It was a VATS, and
Right.
I had interrogated it, and I had gone sequentially 2 to 15, and it ended on 15. It was just an asshole of a car, and I was putting everything back together, and I couldn't get the steering wheel back on or the compression plate to go back in. And I called you, and I was like, I'm really ready to go home. I'm about to cry. I've been out here for like 2 hours in this heat. Like the car had weeds going through the engine, and they're like, it's not going to start, but we just want a key that will work because we're going to sell it. We're moving. And I was like, fuck's sake. So you told me, you're like, just hit it really hard, shake it, and just like there's a burr there. And the moment you said burr, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, ugh! pushed it on and it went in. And ever since then, anytime it hangs up a hair, I just give it a little force because of the burr.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I've had a few where I just kick my foot up while I'm there by the pedals, just kick up and hit the base of the column, kind of shakes it loose.
What's the hardest car that you've ever made a key to? Have you ever made a key to those Porsche? I think it's a 928 that has that weird angular key.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It is a fun one. And, of course, you know, we didn't have fancy machines back then. So it was basically, I sat there and I had to do it with my stupid file. Because so long as you get the angle right on this side and that side and so forth on all four sides, as long as you keep the angle right, you can get the dumb thing to work. But, you know, it's going to take you a lot of time.
So did you impression them?
No.
No?
No, because it's still a wafer, just like a high security key, just like a regular double-sided key. It's still a wafer, and that blank is extremely thick. So if I tried to impression something like that, by the time I was done, I would just destroy the tumblers.
Oh, okay.
So I took door lock apart.
Hell yeah.
I think we have a question real quick. We have B Stickler right here.
Okay.
Because I have a question for 90s Ford ignitions. Are they known for the pins completely going missing in action? Just did a 92 F-150, and there was a hair of a wafer visible at the back end of the ignition. Nothing else.
They don't normally go missing in action, but the way those tumblers were designed, it wouldn't take much if somebody got a little stupid in there with their key that they could break off the two halves of the tumbler. So the part that rides on the key can break off while the part that's blocking the sidebar can still be there.
He said,
I've seen that on a couple of GM 10 cuts as well.
Hair of a top pin. Maybe he's talking about a pin tumbler or something like that.
Well, no, if he's talking about a 92, it's going to be a wafer tumbler sidebar. So it might be that we're just having a terminology issue where we're talking about two different things.
Does your old ass do any EEPROM, Andrew?
I have successfully done one.
What have you done?
I have done a Jeep Liberty using the Auto Pro pad and a stupid Pomona clip one time out of two.
How come you're afraid of EEPROM whenever you in your spare time build robots and program Arduino?
Basically, it's because I have shaky hand syndrome. And we were talking about that earlier today. I sent you a picture of the little device that I'm trying to build for me to hold my soldering iron. Could you imagine writing a term paper, holding a pen like this? Okay, your handwriting would be terrible. You're used to holding a pen down here.
Yeah.
Now, if I could hold a soldering iron like this, then I could be much more steady and I wouldn't destroy the electronics that I have tried to solder in the past. So I'm playing with some wire right now. I sent you a picture of my first one just today, where I can hold it down there and still be insulated from the heat of the iron, because you're resting your hand like this when you're writing. But when you're sitting there with a soldering iron, you're way up here and everything's all over the place. And I have, back when I was trying to learn the 555 timer chip, I have destroyed a whole bunch of circuits.
Uh-huh.
And I learned my lesson. I suck at soldering until I can get like this. When I can get like this, then I can solder a wire safely and not destroy a circuit board. How many PCMs do you think I would have destroyed if I had tried it this way? Every last one.
How truly bad is your handshake? Because
when I'm pinning a lock, I brace both elbows on my knees at my workbench to keep my hands working together, pinning a lock.
Okay.
Okay.
I asked out of curiosity because my hand shakes pretty bad, and I can solder just fine. But it's just for me, it's technique. I use a lot of heat and a lot of flux. So when I get that iron down there, think the bitch is soldered. It's quick,
Well, yeah,
really quick.
I understand, but
That's why I just
tried-
asked out of curiosity. Jarrett's friend, what's his name? Was it Greg with the shaky hands in the video? I've seen him shake, enough on camera where you can really notice it and be able to solder. So I just ask out of curiosity if it's just
Well,
have you not practiced a lot of soldering?
Possible. It's possible somebody could teach me how to be able to work it without having my shakes be in the way. But since I'm self-taught on almost everything, I've had nobody to show me a better way.
Okay.
Let's see.
Well, we're only a few hours apart.
Yeah, but then a few hours is quite a distance, isn't it?
A little bit, but
I mean, you and I have never
might
met
need
in
to make a
person.
trip down to the beach.
So you're in Virginia Beach. Is that where you're from?
Yeah.
What's it like there? What's your main clientele? Do you have old people, any landmarks, anything cool that makes your area unique?
Well, we got lots of landmarks. I mean, besides the fact that we got the ocean right there, okay, you can't beat that too much. You got
The underwater
aquarium. We've got a huge amount of Navy presence between. We have the only naval master air station on the East Coast. We have NOB, which is where all the aircraft carriers go. We have Langley just across the water. We have a very large military presence here. We have a lot of old stuff. We were pretty much the borderline between North and South during the Civil War.
Oh.
Okay, so there's lots of battlefields, lots of forts, lots of shit like that. If you're into the history, we've got a small aviation museum, but it's kind of small. It's not going to get you real excited if you see it the first time. I was not happy with the NASA museum over in Hampton on the other side of the water. That was kind of weak, but the Maritime Museum was great.
So you have like a lot of federal infrastructure. Like Eric is 2 hours away from you,
right?
And he has to deal with a lot of traffic due to people coming and going from DC.
Oh yeah, up 95 sucks.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. You know
so
it.
It's a Virginia thing then, right? Like where Virginia is highly, I guess, in fucking it's
really as soon as you start getting close to the DC, when you get into things like DC, Baltimore, all that kind of stuff, everybody is just total assholes when it comes to traffic. Okay, now you get down to Virginia Beach, the only time it's really bad is during tourist season, like right now, because the dumbasses don't even know where the fuck they're going. So they'll stop in the left lane thinking maybe they should make a right turn now. And shit like that.
Right. It sounds about every day up here.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times I'd be at the 7-Eleven on Virginia Beach Boulevard, and they're like, which way to the beach? I said, you see that road right there? Go that way. Go east. When you hit water, you went too far. I mean, dude. You know, we've actually had our fair share of a couple of riots a bunch of years ago. They used to have this thing called Greek Fest, that would happen every year. That was the college dorms would pretty much like just take over the oceanfront and stuff. And one year it got real super carried away, and they tore up the town. So then the city decided to change everything around, and they don't call it Fest anymore. I forget what they call it now. But they just totally dismantled the whole festival thing.
Damn.
At that time, my neighbor was a cop, and she had to get all dressed in her riot gear and go fight the bad guys down the oceanfront.
So I'm curious, what machines do you run on a daily? Are you a HPC guy?
No. On my truck, I basically carry just a Miracle A9 Edge and my duplicator and my file.
What duplicator?
It's the Silka Flash. It's a nice little machine that doesn't take up a lot of space on my workbench, but it does have a habit of throwing shavings everywhere. It's the only thing I really don't like about it is the shavings. They're like all over. If you sit up close to your machine, you're going to get shavings in your crotch. So you always want to sit back and make sure your arms are long to use that thing. Otherwise, you're going to make a mess. But it's a skinny little footprint, so I got stuff behind it for storage.
And you roll in a Econoline, right?
No, his favorite. He likes Chevy. It's Chevy.
No, actually, it's a Ford.
Ford.
My previous van was a Chevy, and that was the beast. That thing was the extended length. It had a GVR of 9,300 pounds. It could carry everything you could damn well please in there, including you could fill it floor to ceiling with brick, and it could handle it. But it leaked like a sponge whenever you're driving down the road in the rain because it had a lot of body flex. And it would leak all over the place. So I finally got rid of it and got the Ford because my equipment cost more than the van did.
Looks like Locksmith Jeremy wants to know how many locksmith companies are in your area. Do you find a lot of competitors? Are there scammers there, or is it mostly you?
There are a ton of different locksmith companies in my area, but there's also millions, and I say that in the literal sense, of people. I mean, just Virginia Beach alone is 500,000. Then Norfolk is another 500,000. And then Portsmouth and Chesapeake. And you sit there and you add up all the people in the 7-city area, and that's a lot of damn people. And
there's plenty to go around.
Yeah, there's lots of work going around. There's a few scammers out there. We got one angry Russian guy. His name's Levi, I think. And I'm not sure how he stays in business because he keeps pissing off his customers.
That kind of sounds familiar.
Yeah, he'll sit there. Somebody call him up and he'll yell at him over the phone even before he got the job. You know, one time
Don't we all get that like that eventually?
What's that?
Don't we all get that like that eventually?
Well, we think that way, but we kind of hold that back when we're actually trying to do business. You want to call them an asshole, but you don't, because you really want their money.
Yeah.
There's someone in my area who will call everyone an asshole who calls, and they'll say, "I called this other guy, and he was super rude, and I know who it is, and he's actually a really nice guy, but he's just burned out."
Ah. Well, best I can tell, this guy really is that kind of an asshole. I've never actually met him. I've just heard so many stories about him.
So shout out Russian Levi in Virginia Beach. You're an asshole.
Oh, I'm sure he's not on Facebook, okay?
Word might get around.
but he's definitely got a little reputation. We've got a couple of other good people out here. I mean, my buddy Antonio, he's on Locksmith Nation. He just doesn't spend much time on Facebook anymore because he's got a busy life. Yeah, he's been my bud for 35 something years, and we share jobs all the time. If he's busy, I'll do it. If I'm busy, he does it.
So
That's a good thing to have in your local town. I have that with three other locksmiths in my town.
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to ask you a question about that. Like, being that you're older, you come from way back before the internet.
Right.
Like, is there a big change in how you see locksmiths exchanging information compared to back then? Could you get help? Were there networks, or were you basically left to your own devices?
Well, they used to hit like a telegram back then.
Yeah, Morse code.
Yeah.
Fucking Morse code. I need help. 1975 Chevy.
We actually used to have a local association called the Tidewater Locksmith Association back when I first got down here. And it was really good. We'd meet up once a month. We'd have classes with each other and everything else. I got to actually do a couple classes. Felt really weird when I'm sitting there with only 4 or 5 years experience trying to teach these people that have 30 or 40 years experience, but they really just hung on my every word, and it was weird. But after a while, the old guard of that time started retiring, and nobody new was starting to come in, and it just kind of faded away until suddenly there was no TLA anymore. Yeah, I really did miss that. I mean, we had some good times, and we did a lot of sharing. And then all of a sudden, I was on my own. And there I was, all by myself.
Yeah. You say it was a little weird only being, a few years into it and teaching people. I get that kind of feeling too, helping Jareth and Paul and everything with teaching, because it's only been 3 years for me. That's I started in 2020.
Well, yeah, it could feel weird, but I mean,
it's kind of like, I know what I'm saying, but why are they going to listen to me? I've only got 3 years. You know what I mean?
Well, you keep wondering, how is it possible that they don't know what you think you know? And why are they acting like what you're saying has never been said before?
Right.
It's a really weird feeling when you get there. And it drove me nuts trying to figure out why they would listen to me when I was just the new guy.
Yeah.
Do you teach any classes right now, like for any associations or anything like that? I know that you admin a lot. How many groups do you admin first off?
I stayed admin only for the Locksmith Nation groups. And it really, I was meant to only admin just the hobbies page and nothing more. And then I kind of got sucked in.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden they started leaning on me for a few other things. And I mean, being an admin is not really being a mentor or being a teacher. It's really just watching over the children to make sure they behave.
Right.
So being an admin is not really a big mark in itself.
I agree.
When I first started going on the pages, I thought the admins were the big gurus. They weren't the big gurus. They were just watching over the children.
Yep.
Yeah.
I found that a lot of times you find admins are just people that can post a lot and be on the internet a lot and engage a lot. And people mistakenly will jump on to a group with like 15,000 members, and the admins will play God. They quality control. So anybody who shits on them, they delete. And, they will purposely back each other up. They're a team, and they pile onto each other. But I always find it funny, like you go to different groups and they have different experts, different admins. And right. I'm like, who's this guy pretending to be somebody? I've never heard of him,
Well, Well, I actually got into a pretty bad knockdown, drag out fight with another admin. He still hates me to this day, and he already told me never let his name come out my mouth, so I ain't gonna say his name. You know, but things went wrong because I thought he was playing the God card too much,
Yeah.
and it bugged me, and I confronted him, and then we started our war.
I can only imagine who that could be.
Yeah, well, we're not going to talk about that anymore. We're going to move on. Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, as you see, like adminning groups and stuff can be fucking nuts, right? It tears people apart. It's kind of, it is what it is. Like, it's easy to become an admin, actually, and a lot of people don't know that. But we will move on. Paul, he knows about that, don't you, Paul?
Yeah.
How many groups?
We're not going to talk about this.
There you go. That's a very smart answer. Thank you.
That's a very Paul answer.
Yes, it is. So let's talk about something. I want to debate you real quick. The boys are going to jump in if they need to. I got something to ask you. How come you repair Volkswagen ignitions over just swapping them?
Well, there is an inherent flaw in the design of the Volkswagen ignition housings.
Mm-hmm.
I sent you the pictures earlier. If you can find them in your screen, I even circled where the problem is when I did an article for Keynotes. And when I repair a column, when I repair one of those housings, I can actually guarantee they will never have another problem of that sort with that car for the rest of the life of that car. If I replace that housing, I'm just replacing it with another one with a flawed design.
Okay, now I can understand that, but let's argue the fact that you're taking apart something, right? You have to forcibly remove a part versus just exchanging it for another, right? A new part. So
No. I don't forcibly remove. I disassemble it.
What's the pin in the back that you have to kind of pluck out?
Oh, that's for this. That's their cute little interlock system that they designed, so that if you take the ignition out while it's turned off, it'll pop a pin to lock the steering wheel lock into the column, so that you can't turn it forward unless you take it off the column first.
Okay.
So I remove that because I'm going to remove the steering wheel lock anyway. So that's not necessary, and it's easier to get it from the outside than it is to try to get it from the inside after you popped it.
I'm currently trying to upload your photos real quick, so hopefully
you'll see one in particular where you're looking down the front, and you'll see a hole punched through the pot metal, and I did a little red circle around it. That's the one that shows where they go wrong.
Okay. Let's see if I can pull something up real quick, okay?
Okay.
All right. Let us
That's the piece that goes wrong.
Let us see if we can move out of the way, maybe.
Yeah, that would help.
Wouldn't it?
I'm out of the way. Why don't you put it on that screen behind you?
Oh, maybe I could do that. Let's do that. So
that would be the best way to do it.
All right. Boys, jump in while I get to work.
Jump.
Eric, you're on.
Yo.
Ask him that question you wanted to ask while I figure out how to throw a picture behind me.
Okay. What is the flaw in the column or in the housing? Because it's a $25 part to replace.
Okay.
So it's cheap, but you say you fix the flaw, so it's never going to happen again. What's the actual flaw itself? Because obviously, if it's a $25 part, going to have the same flaw, probably maybe even worse as the OEM.
Right, exactly. Now, when you turn the key and it swings the cam to pull down the steering wheel locking bolt,
Mhm.
there's a spring-loaded pin that holds it down so that when you turn the key, oops, here we go. When you turn the key back, it's still holding it down until you pull the key out, and then it releases it and lets the bolt pop back up into the column. And that spring-loaded pin is only pushing against a real thin bit of pot metal that leads into the front chamber.
Okay.
And after a while, over the years, that thin piece of pot metal breaks away, and that pin shoots up forward into the rest of the connections, and that's what jams it up to make it stiff to turn.
Okay.
So take it apart, you get rid of the steering wheel locking bolt because most new cars don't even have a steering wheel lock anymore anyway. It's redundant. It's not needed anymore.
Right.
You get rid of the chunk of pot metal. You get rid of that spring-loaded pin. You get rid of all that, and the thing will work smooth forever.
Gotcha. So basically, you're doing a steering wheel lock delete.
Basically, yes. I'm
of the
doing a
sort.
delete, and I'm removing the rubble from the previous damage.
I mean, I don't see a damn problem with that, considering on a Mercedes, we do the same thing when those electronic steering locks fail. And like you said, it's a redundancy that's not really, I mean, how necessary is it today? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, exactly.
What are you gonna do? You can go in there, leash you the car, make a key, turn it. It's still not going to start. If you can't program it, I mean, you can go in there, jam a screwdriver, turn it. It's still not going to start.
Right. It's kind of like shear-headed bolts have passed their time.
God, I know.
I could understand them back in the 70s, but not no more. I mean,
Right.
Chevy was already doing a couple of cars without shear-headed bolts where they just used a 10-millimeter bolt.
Right, and they should at this point. I mean, what are you going to get from taking the ignition off of the column?
Right. If you can't
you're not going to steal the car.
If you can't beat the computer, you can't beat the car.
Exactly.
So when I delete that steering wheel locking bolt, I'm not leaving the car less secure. Not really.
No.
And I'm guaranteeing that car will never have that issue again.
Jareth just did one yesterday. I just did one a few days ago.
Yeah, he did one of the older versions. It's a pain in the ass because it has that stupid tray underneath.
Yeah,
around 08 or so.
It was
talking about the electronics.
Yeah, everything plugged into that tray underneath, and you always have to fight with the two clips and the one screw to get that tray out of the way.
Yeah, so I just popped the steering wheel off to get that screw inch shit out because it's so easy on those cars. And then I was telling Jareth yesterday, he had called, the easiest way to get that down is take the cover off, pull the PCB down, and then you can get to those two clips very easily. But he did show me the pictures. The column you had, I do like that design a good bit better. The ones that the two of us had worked on recently, where the shear head bolts are, is covered in plastic. It's like completely covered, and then just a tiny little hole.
Just enough for them to get a that's all you got to do. Yeah. Well, I use a specialized punch. I ground down a regular pin driver, gave it a point. That way I can get down on it and hit down and get the right angle and move it that way so I don't have to worry about those plastic holes. Yeah, that's just that's the screws for the cover.
So real quick, I had to make a video, so I quickly compiled your photos. I don't know if I got them all, but we're gonna see. I'm gonna play through. You tell me what to do, skip forward or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, that's that T9.
That's what Jareth had to work on.
That's the exact one, and that I had trouble with. I've done one of these before, and somebody told me
you have to go into the side for the front one and in the back for the second one to get the two clips. And that screw, the steering wheel does get in the way. When I did that picture, I had taken this the steering wheel off, but I've learned if you turn the steering wheel upside down, you can still actually get it without taking the wheel off. So then you don't have to fuck with the airbag.
See, now I completely disassembled mine. This is the same one I did like 2 days ago, and people are always telling me like, "Oh, you're doing too much work," but I feel like I'm doing just enough. You know what I mean?
Well, it is more convenient to reach things when you got the steering wheel out of the way. But it is possible to do it while the steering wheel is still on, as long as you have the steering wheel in the right position.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of those airbags that can be a royal pain to get popped off in order to get to the bolt that holds the steering wheel in place. So I kind of got away from doing the steering wheel off game. I just started doing it, just turn the damn thing upside down so I can get to that screw.
So what happens if the steering lock is engaged? How are you going to turn the wheel?
The steering lock is never totally engaged because you can always get that key to turn just enough to release the steering wheel lock to turn the wheel. It may drag a bit, but it'll still turn.
That's a pro tip right there, because I always assume it's like, locked up. And
yeah.
Now I know.
Yeah, go ahead and stick the key in, and you'll notice it may turn only an eighth of a turn, but it'll turn enough
and it'll release it
to release that bolt.
Yeah.
What do we have next? We have, what is that?
That was my original assessment as the best place to drill to force it to turn. That's actually not very accurate anymore.
Good. So be it. So we're going to see what happens next. What's that?
All right. That is the spring for that spring-loaded pin just sitting there after it popped through the pop metal.
So that's the failure.
That's
right?
the failure point right there. That's half of the failure right there.
All right, cool. All right. So I've never actually taken one of these apart. I've always said you're Looney Tunes. I understand, like, you want to take it apart to figure it out, but I figure, like, I got shit on a long time ago when I was just starting, right? It was the GM 6-cut ignitions, and I was trying to figure out how to take it apart to decode it and make a key. And all the vetted guys were like, just replace it, Jareth. It's like $8. And I was like, but what if one day it's the zombie apocalypse and I want to know how to take it apart? And they all called me the R word, right?
Well, no, you always want to learn how they work.
Right. And now I'm kind of the shoes on the other foot. I'm like, look at this madman. What are you doing? You know?
If you don't understand what you're working with, then all you're doing is being a parts replacer. You have to understand what's going on.
I agree.
Andrew, have you taken I know you have at least done them before, the escape ignitions, Ford Focus?
It's been a while. All right, yeah, see right there, that picture is showing where that spring-loaded pin sits in the lock bolt. I've done one, but it's been quite a while. I think that's one I saw a picture on the pages a little while ago, and it basically comes out the back because it's kind of like a Mazda design.
Okay. So, all right,
back to Volkswagen. That's the spring-loaded pin.
Part 2 of the failure.
That is the piece that ends up causing all the trouble. That's not where it causes trouble, though.
Let's see. We're going to play, see what happens next. What's that?
That's the chunk of pot metal that it broke.
So when it breaks, it gets lodged, or it creates like a point where it can't articulate. Is that what's going on?
Well, that piece plus the pin next to it get up into a chamber where they don't belong, and they just get everybody else up.
Okay, they jam it up. Traffic jam.
Yeah, because they're just floating free, so they're just bouncing around, making all sorts of mess.
Okay, well, let's see what's coming up next. Again, hopefully I didn't upload a dick pic accidentally.
All right, that's just me taking the pieces out the front.
Okay.
Is this hard to disassemble?
Not really. You got that plastic clip right there. You can see the white plastic.
Yeah.
And it's really only plastic, so you just pry a little bit on
Back up
it
there.
and pull it out.
Okay.
If you can back up.
Yeah, there it goes.
Yeah. You see that white plastic clip is just that's what holds everybody down in.
The outer ring, right?
And that white piece.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you pry it inside and pull that out, and then you pull the other pieces out like you saw on the other picture, that one there, and you just pull them out the front.
And that will get you here, maybe? Where's that?
Not yet. You didn't go far enough. And
that's
you don't have them in order.
Neither did you.
Yeah, forget that one. That doesn't even
that fucking picture.
Okay. So
you just threw out my pic. I think you just passed it. I think. No, that's not it. There's a picture looking down the throat of the lock.
All right, I'll have to grab it and compile it real quick. So let us talk about.
Because I managed to get a really nice picture of where it pops through the pop metal.
Okay, I'll find it.
And I circled the break point.
Just bear with me. I've got to compile
I sent you.
Okay. Let's see here.
Andrew, was that ignition OEM?
Yes, it actually was. It's kind of funny because every last one of them has the 4 circles of Audi on them.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Audi used that same ignition.
Absolutely.
I just have never actually got a call for an Audi with this problem.
Neither have I, to be honest. Actually, I've never gotten a call outside of the Jetta for this problem.
Well, I've had a few Golfs and
coincidentally, I own a Jetta.
I've had a couple of Passats and a Golf that had that problem. Now there is an earlier version that gets to be stiff, but I could never really. So I would just replace them on those.
Yeah.
It's not the same design as this one, so it's not the exact same problem. And you can always tell that it's the earlier version because you got a whole bunch of number 1 Phillips just holding the covers in place.
Okay.
Really weird design compared to the 3 Torx T25s that you have on these.
Oh, yeah.
But that was like earlier versions, like early 2000s and so forth. And I've only seen like 2 of those, and I just replaced them straight out.
Okay. And so the like you, I like to know why things fail too.
Right.
So the Ford Escape / Ford Focus ignition.
Yeah, that's another fun one.
Yeah. So it's got kind of like 3 pieces that come. It's like there's like 2 ball joints in there. So you got where the ignition is, and then there's like another straight piece, and then another ball joint that hooks up to the actual electrical switch.
Right.
And
it's that
real
one
thin
dog
pop
leg
metal that connects those ball joints, and that's what snaps. So it's not really repairable on those ones because I've taken them apart and I've found that that's what's all the ones I've done. That's what's broken.
Yeah, I took one apart, and they really, when they made that dog leg joint right behind the ignition cylinder, they really did it in a stupid kind of way. Mm-hmm. I mean, because you're dealing with a plastic housing, and plastic will stretch over the years. And now people will do some shortcuts where they'll sit there and they'll cut the stop back on the cylinder so that the cylinder can turn farther and it can still engage.
Yeah, we've got Glenn Sorge here says, I heard a trick on the Ford Escape / Focus that I've used a few times. 3 rounds of electrical tape around the D shape of the cylinder, and he's never had a call back.
Yeah, I've actually.
Have you tried that?
I ran across one that somebody had done that fix, quite a few years ago, and then they ended up having that problem again. They ended up calling me, and I said, "No, we're going to replace the housing." And
Okay.
unfortunately, I really can't guarantee on that one that I've solved it forever because I'm just putting a flawed part back in.
Yeah, it's
just
going
a
to happen
new
again
one.
inevitably.
It's just a new one instead of an old one.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
at this
I
point, those
don't know
cars are so
I don't
old.
know a permanent solution for that bitch.
Yeah, I don't think there really is going to be one. But those cars are so old at this point that um, if we're replacing them now, by the time they fail again, they're probably going to be in the junkyard. To be
Well,
honest.
it's kind of sad, but that's pretty much the way we have to hope is that
Yeah.
the car dies before the housing that fails again. I don't have a permanent solution on those guys like I do on the Volkswagens.
Yeah, yeah, because it's just a flawed design. And the reality is, like, when I took it apart, I was really just kind of mind blown by how stupid of a design it is. I mean, really, you couldn't come up with something that just goes from A to B. We really had to go A, B, C with two rotating ball joints in there. It just seems weird to me.
Oh yeah, it's almost like they had a German influence with a little over engineering going on. Yeah.
Paul must have had some influence on that one.
That's it. We'll blame Paul for that.
Yeah, yeah, he's
It's
our
payback for the war. It's all right.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, you like permanent solutions. How do you fix Honda ignitions since we're putting flawed parts back into that one as well?
Well, that one again. I mean, it's still a flawed design, just like the Escape. And I give every customer the Honda speech. I give them the be gentle with your key, and I try to train them to make sure that they're putting their key in straight. And it's always a brand new key to go with the brand new tumblers. And I'll give them the honest truth. I've had some customers where they can 4 or 5 years without any other trouble afterwards. And then I get some that 6 months later, they've done it again.
Delivery drivers.
Well, I've actually had a couple. One was a taxi and one was a courier for dental stuff. And I took every single tumbler out and left nothing but the tip solid tumbler. And that was the only thing in that car to keep the key from turning. And I said, that's the best I can do for you on that. And I told them there's nothing I can do to make it a permanent solution. I mean, I can't fix that.
You know what's really tripping me out is
dumbass design.
You guys, you keep talking about the Germans and permanent solution.
Yeah, no, not the kind of solution Hitler talked about. I'm talking about fixing something so it stays working, not making them go away.
Careful.
There's a big difference.
All right, so forgive me again.
This guy.
Yeah, it's this guy right here, the German. So I've recompiled it.
I'm 50% English, 25% German, so you might as well bug me about that too.
I've compiled another file here. We're going to see how it works if we do well.
Okay.
Look at us all together like the Partridge Family. Let's go on the side. I think the side's better. So let's go on the side.
While you try to find it, somebody else pointed out that you never give back the Warren key on a Honda, and I agree completely.
Me too.
Absolutely.
You give them a new key, you're running all keys lost, so they don't even have a choice to use the Warren key anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I tell them
Keep
too,
going.
like, there's no warranty if you have another key and you put that thing in this ignition, consider your warranty void.
Well, you know they're going to put it in the door after you.
That picture there, we might as well explain that one while
what did you do to the customer's car?
Oh no!
Oh yeah, that is a stupid little interlock that will lock the steering wheel lock up if you pull the ignition out while it's in the off position. And when you go to take it apart, that thing will get in your way while you're trying to get everybody apart. So I just take the dumb thing out.
Now, you say pull the ignition in the off position. How do you get it out?
If you were a thief and you did some dent puller bullshit,
Okay.
then it would automatically lock the column so that you can't turn the wheel, even if you pulled out the ignition and figured out how to beat the computer and all that kind of stuff. It's
Okay.
another leftover from the bygone years, and it's not necessary.
Okay.
That's a picture of the cylinder being taken apart.
I definitely put that in the wrong spot.
Well,
That's OG right there. That's
Well,
old
it
school
gets
there.
better.
Nobody takes
All
apart.
right.
a
now
Volkswagen
that's a spot right there where it shows the spring-loaded pin rubbing on that cam. It's just a minor bit of damage. You can pretty much ignore that since you're taking out the lock bolt anyway. I was just pointing out that it hits there, and that's what actually it hits on to keep the steering wheel lock from popping up until after you pull the key out. That's showing the switch on the backside being taken out.
Okay.
And that's what I used to take the ignition switch out. That's just showing them together while it's out of the housing. That was me demonstrating how to get the antenna ring off of the ignition cylinder. And then you do that to attack the ring that holds the cap on.
And that's the only way to effectively disassemble an HU66 ignition.
Yeah, because there's a hardened ring all the way around the edge that presses outwards to hold that cap on, and you have to press in on it in order to pop it off.
Interesting.
So the first step is to get the immobilizer ring off safely, and then you attack it, that ring that holds it onto the cylinder. There's all the pieces out all together. It does help to sit that socket in the like you saw on the desk there.
Let's go back and look at that.
We're still going.
You said there was a socket?
Yeah, you see the socket? It fits inside the cap so that as you're pressing on the ring, pushing in, you tap on the out, you turn it upside down so that the face of the cylinder is hitting the socket, but the ring is not. And while you're pushing in on one side, you bang down on the outside edge of the ring. It'll help pop it off easier.
Okay.
Just a ghetto help.
And that's the inside of the housing.
Right, we saw that.
It's attacking the insides, the innards.
Pulling them out, not attacking. We saw that pin. That's the piece that broke.
And again, with that photo, apparently.
And that photo that we don't want anymore. And there's the piece of debris.
And that's all I got.
Well, what happened to all the other pictures I sent you?
Which one are we looking for?
You're looking down the throat of the housing.
Throat of the housing.
After I pulled the pieces out, and you'll see that little red circle is showing in one little corner.
Okay, I got it.
You found it?
Got it. Let me throw it up here real quick. 1 second. It'll take probably 3 minutes. Eric or Paul, if you want to step in real quick.
Yeah, you guys talk for a bit. We already lost Eric. He left.
He'll be back.
Oh, you got the
You're
chair.
gonna get rid of me that easy there, Andrew? Shit.
So this is down the throat of the Iggy, or the housing. That's what I'm looking for. I found it, and we are going to open it right now.
I find this fascinating. The only one I've ever done, I completely destroyed with ended up using a step drill bit until it finally turned, and it was a mess, and I replaced it.
Well, I have had a
what car
couple
was that,
that
Paul?
I had to destroy just to get the dumb thing to turn. I'd sit there and I'd make a test key, and I'm sitting there with vice grips, and I almost broke the test key. There, that's the picture. That if you can zoom in, you can see where the bit of pot metal just got busted straight out, and everything just sprung forward into that front section, and that's what makes it hard to turn because everything's just jamming up where it doesn't belong.
Hmm.
You get rid of all that shit, and it can't cause any problems.
Andrew, that's where those MFK blades from GTL come in handy.
Well, yeah, but I actually broke one trying to force it over, and I still ended up having to drill into the housing and beat on it with a hammer and screwdriver, just like Paul was talking about,
Mm.
just to
Yeah.
save the cylinder.
Fortunately, I haven't run into that yet. It's only a matter of time, though. I've always
I
at
got
least
one
been able
sitting
to
in my
force them
truck.
on.
I haven't gotten around to throwing away yet.
Do you do keyed ignition Mercedes failures?
I used to way back when, back before the transponder stuff.
Oh God, those are.
Yeah, the only ones I ever messed with after transponders was when they break the keys off in the ML series.
It's always the
minivan.
ML.
I guess there's something about where the key sits that they like to break them off in the ignition.
It's always the ML.
Yeah, I swear it always is. But you can force that black ring off.
Yeah, I've done it.
You take a pair of vice grips and you force it to turn because the retainer just barely grabs onto it.
Yeah.
You force it to turn, work it out, and then you can actually get into the slots and kind of massage them damn things to try to work the key back forward, get it out, put a fresh key in, and so forth.
Jareth had one last year. Was it last summer?
What?
The ML with that lady who had hers that was stuck, and she put like 2 pounds of graphite down the lock.
I think that was like an SLK, or it was a car.
Was it a car?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a convertible, and they had a ignition housing failure, and they put like a whole bunch of graphite in it. Whenever I'd put the key in and pull it out, it would literally like splash me graphite in particulates. So
I did that ML like maybe a week or two before Jareth did that same car. It wasn't too bad. Her key had broke off again, broke off in the ignition, and the reason it broke off was one of the wafers had gotten jammed up and pretty much had failed. So I took hers apart and fixed her ignition, but I wasn't even sure like what was going on with it or anything. So just to be on the safe side, I was like, order all the shit. I bought like a whole housing and everything, and I never even used it. I think I resold it.
Well, they had a bad problem in the 80s and the early 90s. The relocker for the steering wheel lock, just like the one that I took out on that Volkswagen,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that they used to make on the Mercedes had some pot metal long bar type items in there that would bend over years. And even if you had the right key, all of a sudden it would relock the steering wheel lock. So that even with a good key, you couldn't turn the damn thing.
Damn.
And you had to sit there and you had to go underneath the column with a cutoff grinder, and you had to literally cut that stupid thing in half.
See, we're
And
lucky
then
today.
you
We don't
had
have
to
that
relock
shit.
it out of the way just to get the steering wheel lock out. Then you could get the bolt up to get the steering wheel lock out of the column because it would lock in place until the bolt was pulled.
what car was this?
This was the later 80s, like the SDs and the SEs and stuff like that.
Mercedes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the old shit. And it was nothing but a pain in the neck, especially if you get into some of the later ones that had the electric tilt wheels, and you had to take all that kind of stuff apart after you pulled the cluster out of the way. The bolts were on top to get to the steering wheel to lower it, but you had screws coming from under the dash to hold the covers in place and all that kind of stuff. Oh, Adam's trying to be funny now.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
yeah, we
no
like graphite.
Do you guys like graphite?
Yeah, we eat it for lunch. Sometimes not on purpose.
No, in
I've
all
done a couple of
seriousness,
those Mercedes jobs right there at the Mercedes lot back before they changed the rules.
they changed the rules.
It's
of
always
what?
fun when you can do a job at the dealership that the dealership can't do. I've gone to BMW dealerships and made keys before, which is pretty fun.
Well, bunch of years ago, I think it was like 20 years ago, Jared, Mercedes handed down this super thick internal memo to all the dealerships telling them what they could no longer do. And one of the biggest things was they could not even sell a workshop ignition to anybody that was not part of the subscription plan of being an authorized Mercedes dealer or repair shop. And so you couldn't get anything. Plus, if a customer wants to order a key by the VIN number, they couldn't just show proof of ownership. They actually had to tow the car into the dealership, and the parts guy had to go outside, touch the car, and verify that the car existed in the real world before he could even order the key.
Andrew, you know where Charlottesville is, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was down there a couple times for the NCLA.
So I went to Charlottesville to do a Mercedes. A guy called me, and it's a pretty good drive from here, but, you know, charge accordingly, right? But I went out there to go do a Mercedes. It was an all keys lost. It was infrared fobic, you know, nothing over the top, nothing crazy. But the guy, I said to him, I was like, man, look, I'm charging you all this money. There's a Mercedes dealership right here in town. Like, how come you didn't go there? The Mercedes dealership in Charlottesville is so fucking gangster that they will not allow you to bring a third-party tow truck into their lot. If it's not Mercedes to come pick up your car and tow it there, they will not accept the car, and then you can't get a key made there. So, you know, they wanted the same amount of money I was charging for a key plus their extravagant tow fee. So even though I charged him what I felt like was a lot of money to drive out there and do it, it was still cheaper for him because even though his friend had a tow truck that would tow it for free, the Mercedes dealer there had told him, no, we will not accept it. We will turn him away. You cannot bring that tow truck into our lot.
Oh, yeah. Well,
So
my
they're-
local
they're-
Mercedes
they're pretty
dealer
crazy.
actually got mad about that thing. They gave me a copy of that memo because they were mad because they were used to using me as their favorite local expert on certain things that their mechanics didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I wasn't allowed to do them no more, and they were pissed.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that came from the corporate more than it did from the dealer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't realize that. I mean, my local Ford dealer, they actually they fired their courtesy driver because he wasn't very courteous to his boss, and he took the only key to their van. They could not walk over to their own parts department and get a key by code because it was never put in a person's name, and Ford corporate won't let them pull a key code unless they have that paperwork on file. So they had to call me in as a third party
you in
to their own van.
Do you do any mechanic work? Any diagnostician work? Anything like that? 'Cause I'm finding the new age of locksmithing is more involved in chasing down problems so that we can get to key programming. Eric is pretty good at troubleshooting, and you are too. Like you're a master of figuring shit out, which is why I was getting up your butt a second ago about taking apart the housing.
Yeah.
But what do? You have to be somewhat limited, being that you don't solder or do EEPROM. Let's hear about it.
Well, it's basically if you've got a no start issue and they want to blame the key, you got
Yes.
to you
Yes.
got to go out there. I mean, they love to blame the key because they're assuming that's going to be their cheapest way to fix the damn car
Every
Mhm.
time.
all the time.
Every time.
So I get a lot of repair shops will call me in. They think it's a key problem, and I'll sit there and I'll hook up, and I've got the Autel, I've got the Auto Pro Pad, okay, and they've got really strong diagnostic sites, and I can look at the codes, and it takes a little while to get good at it, but you can tell by the language of the codes as to what you have to point to.
You can see that the crank sensor is not reading RPM. Therefore, it's probably a crankshaft position sensor, and there are no PATS codes for Ford or any immobilizer code for XYZ model. And you can prove right there that the so-called mechanic is not a mechanic. He's actually just a dumbass that changes parts and calls a locksmith every time a car doesn't start.
Well, my
I don't
most
know what
recent,
you just said, honestly. So paint me as a dumbass because what the fuck is a crankshaft
Well-
sensor and etc. You
all
know?
right. Well, you have a cam sensor and a crank sensor.
Look, the old
Okay.
man's about to school you.
Every car nowadays, they don't have a distributor anymore. You know that, right?
Yeah.
All right. The computer tells the spark plugs when to fire.
That's because Amazon ships straight to us. They don't need a distributor anymore.
Buzzer. All right. You don't know the Gong Show. That was before your time. And then it tells the injectors when to give it gas.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in order for the computer to tell it when to give it spark and when to give it gas, it has to know what the position of the pistons and the cam are. The crank is for the pistons. The cam is for the cam, whether it's open the valves or not.
Okay.
Okay. So the crank sensor is telling it when the pistons are in the right position.
And so how do you use this information to determine whether or not a key is programmed or there's an issue down the chain?
Well, that first you check to see if there's a key issue. If
Right.
there's no key issue, then you start checking to see what other issues, so you can tell them you go that way.
So the key
Stop looking over here, go that way.
So if the key works, then next down the line is crankshaft and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So
So
on and so
we're
forth.
actually helping them troubleshoot the things that they should have already done, but they're not good enough to do it themselves, so they call you in as their expert.
Okay.
So that's
So-
when we get into that troubleshooting. I mean, I had a Fusion just the other day that their customer called in their own quote locksmith, who quote programmed the keys in after they replaced the PCM. It turns out he didn't bother doing a parameter reset.
Okay.
Of course, I knew that was coming.
And it's quite often all we're doing is we're going over and saying, hey, you missed this one stupid little simple step. That's most of the time, that's what we end up doing with troubleshooting is we point out what they missed, let them do the drudge work, let them get their hands greasy. We tell them what they missed, what they have to do next, and then we collect our money and go.
Yep.
And they think we're geniuses.
Yep.
I was at a used car dealership and they had me work on some kind of Nissan. And they said, oh, yeah, all it needs is a key. And probably about 45 minutes later, I walked in and I said, okay, listen, guys. I figured it out. This is what's wrong with your radio. And you need to fix that. And the mechanic says, oh, yeah, we know about the radio. We already have one on order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to assume they can get that real simple fix by saying, oh, just call Locksmith, get a $50 key, boom, you're out the door. Yeah, bullshit.
Yeah. So I worked on cars as a mechanic. I was ASE certified for 15 years. In 15 years, not one time did I diagnose a key problem as a no start. And in 15 years, I think I replaced maybe 4 PCMs. I can tell you in my town, probably the same where you're at, Andrew, and these guys as well, that every mechanic shop, every no start, every problem, they just start throwing computers at cars.
Oh yeah, they love to throw parts at a car.
Yeah.
That's one of their favorite things. We just put a new PCM in because we know that's the problem. I come out there, program the key, says, "Yep, you still got a problem. That wasn't where you started.
Yep.
At
Let's
least
look
they'll
at a
tell
few
you.
other things now."
Yep. A friend of mine who's a locksmith here in town, he worked at GM for almost 30 years. I have a 2002 GMC Savannah 2500. That was my work van before my Transit. I ironically still own it. But it had a crankshaft position sensor code. And I ran through the diagnostic trouble codes and the flow chart of what we should be checking. Check this pin, check continuity, this, that, and the other. I determined I, in fact, do have a bad PCM. That was a weird, thing because the van would run perfectly fine as long as it was cold. As soon as the PCM would warm up and the van got up to operating temperature, it would misfire like a motherfucker because
Overheat the
it wasn't
PCM.
seeing the crankshaft position sensor anymore. So I
Have you ever
had to fight with my friend to replace my own PCM because 30 years at GM, he's like, I don't know. There's no way you need a PCM. I'm like, dude, trust me, I need a PCM. And he went through the diagnostic flow chart with me again. And then one other time, we dropped a separate circuit straight from the back of the ECU, straight to the crankshaft position sensor, just to come back and prove that it needed a PCM. So there's one instance of in 15 years where I needed a PCM.
Well, it does happen.
Yeah, and it does. It
I get to-
absolutely does happen.
I get to see a
sometimes
lot
they
of
do
times
go
with
bad.
that local auto electrician that everybody goes to because nobody wants to pay the dealership price, and they get some really fun ones. One of my favorite was a Nissan that had uh, the breathalyzer in there and a remote start aftermarket, both at the same time, and they fought with each other so bad that they burned out the main power unit. And it was real fun when I got to the car because he got everything wired up perfect, got everything replaced properly, but he doesn't bother to buy the key programming side because he knows he can just bring me in to do that part. And I walk in, and the floor of that car is covered with wires. Yeah, I see Adam wants to say something about he does some of that programming stuff too.
Yeah, he says
Yeah.
he's added diagnostic and module programming besides making car keys. And I wanted to ask you,
I do the same.
the first real, I guess, chipped key was VATS. And today it messes with all the new guys. A lot of the new guys would do a BMW over a VATS. And I wonder, have you ever had to delete a VATS or anything unusual like that?
Well, the VAT system is kind of
The best in the
basically,
world.
You could call it a dumb system because it doesn't talk to you. You can't hook up a scanner and have the car tell you we have a key issue. The only way that you know that there's something wrong is if it don't crank.
Mm-hmm.
And if it don't crank, you don't know for sure that it's a key, or if you got a bad starter, or if you got a bad starter relay, or maybe your transmission switch is bad. There's so many things that could keep a car from starting, and the car won't tell you what it is. So you can spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's the right chip when it's an all keys lost. and never figure that shit out because there's something else wrong with that car. And that's why a lot of people don't like to fuck with VATs. Plus, a lot of people don't like doing the Saginaw column.
Yeah.
Okay, we already talked about that. There's a lot of people that there's this emotional fear of something that they haven't done before. So they think it's tough. It's not as tough as they think it is, but they don't want to touch it because they've never done one. Okay, so there's a lot of that. And then if there's nothing wrong with the car, you can spend anywhere from 2 minutes to an hour trying to figure out what's the right chip. So how do you schedule shit like that? And if you price it like it's going to guarantee to take you an hour and you're done in 5 minutes and the customer's like, why the hell are you charging me so much? Or then you charge like it's only going to take you 20 minutes and it takes you that whole hour and there's still something else wrong and you've wasted your damn time. And how do you charge them when you can't even get the shit done because there's a bad starter in the car?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a lot of things wrong with the VAT system. You've got the broken wires in the ignition game. You can bypass it, but you don't know if the wires are broken if you got no keys. There's so many unknowns to those cars when you got no key and the car's been sitting for 10 years. So there's a lot of guys, and I can understand why they don't want to do it. I mean, someone's got to do it, but there's a lot of guys.
Right, that's where I'm at, Andrew.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. Somebody's got to do it. I'm literally the only one in town who does them.
I get paid to delete more VATs or bypass, than anything. Most people want me to bypass it because it's a troubleshooting step where they can be like, okay, like you said, we've got the key figured out. Now we're going to go down here. And sometimes the security light behaves and we can see. Sometimes it doesn't. So,
right.
I typically bypass more than I actually cut a VAT's key for.
Well, yeah, I've done quite a few VATs bypasses, and it's actually cheaper to do a bypass than it is to replace the ignition, obviously, because there's a whole lot less work. You got a couple of 7mm screws. You drop the lower dash panel down under there. You get your resistor pack that you've already set up, because I got them sitting in my truck.
Me too.
Unplug the ignition, plug in the resistor pack, save the plug so you can set up your next pack. Bada bing, you're done. But every once in a while, you're going to get a car with a bad VATS module. So even though you got the right key, even though you've done the bypass, the VATS module won't talk to the PCM proper, and then you got to replace the VATS module.
I've never done that.
Well,
I've never replaced a VATS module.
I've never done it personally. I've always told them it's up there under the dash, over there in the corner by the firewall. You just go ahead and do that for yourself.
Yeah.
I ain't doing it. I'm old. I can't climb under those dashboards so well anymore.
I knew a guy. He was a mechanic when I knew him. He reached out to me on YouTube years ago. He's actually, become a hell of an automotive locksmith. But we met because he was discussing VATS deletion. So it's kind of a specialized, sector that certain dudes delve into, and it doesn't seem easy at all.
Well, yeah, because you got to get over there to where that VATS module is in order to delete VATS.
Yeah. I don't even know how it works, so I'm thankful that it's a little easier. Now we can go into our programmers and kind of like what Eric discussed is see, whenever sensors are misbehaving and such.
Well, yeah, that's why most people don't like VATS compared to the newer stuff, is because now the car will talk to you. The car is smarter. That's why I said VATS is a dumb system, because they don't talk to you.
I agree.
It's a damn secure one,
Mute
though.
is the same as mute. It don't talk to you. It don't tell you what's wrong. The newer cars will talk to you, so they're not dumb. They're not mute.
What kind of car do you drive?
Me?
Yeah.
I drive an 06 Ford Econoline E150
His
modified.
work van.
Actually, it's an E200 now because I replaced the back springs. Our date car is an 05 PT Cruiser convertible for me and the wife. My wife's van is a 2017 Dodge Grand Caravan.
Is it a push to start?
No, but it's got all the stupid sliding doors and power tailgate and all that fun shit.
Love it.
Oh, okay.
And it's got a fucking battery about huge. You can start a tractor
Andrew,
trailer with her battery.
If your PT Cruiser, if you lost all the keys, could you make a new one?
Get out of here.
Actually, yeah, because that's how I bought the car. Is a regular customer called me out to make keys to a couple auction cars that he bought. And I made keys to that, and it seemed like the perfect date car for me and the wife. And I was like, after he paid me to make keys to the car, I says, I want to buy that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I still have my old T-Code Pro. It does really good with the Type 2 Chryslers when it comes to pulling the pin.
I have one car with an immobilizer, which is my Volkswagen. I have an old police car, Crown Vic. No, it's not transponder equipped. My Transit is not transponder equipped, and my Savannah is not transponder equipped. And even my girlfriend's Scion, which is registered in my name, is not transponder equipped.
Must be an XB.
It is.
Well, I solved the transponder problem with my van. I had a remote start installed in my van. And
Installed or you installed it?
I had somebody else install it because they're a regular customer. It's the auto electrician I was talking about earlier.
Okay.
So I put in the electric locks, with relays and everything else because that's what
I did that in my Savannah. It was all manual locks.
They put in the system, and while we were in there, we cut the feed wire off the ignition switch for the starter, so you can turn the key all damn day long if you want to, and you ain't going to start my truck. You have to hit the button on my remote start in order to start my truck.
Nice. I've got one of those, what's called the no code, no start NCNS in my work van.
Right.
It's a little keypad. You got to just punch in the numbers before it'll start. So if you turn my ignition, it'll just crank it. It'll just do nothing. It'll turn and turn and turn, but it won't crank the van. You actually have to enter a code to start it, which will deter, your common everyday thief. But somebody as smart as me or you or Jareth or Paul, we'll figure out how to get around that. We'll figure out how to hook the wires back up factory and just.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the real truth is,
Paul broke it. He broke my ignition. So technically, I have the least secure vehicle here.
That's what you get for losing my screwdriver.
Dude,
there you go.
My vehicle dies now because it thinks that there's a key always in it, and so, thanks, Paul.
Keeps the BCM alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the real truth is when they break into one of our vans, they're not breaking in to take the whole van. They're breaking in to take the things that they think are valuable.
Right.
The biggest things they want is our scammers now, so they can steal other cars.
Hey, look.
Yeah, those right there.
That's worth money. Let's take that. That's a tablet. We're going to steal that shit, It's up here because I was updating it. But that's, they see that stuff. That's what they're going to take. Even our key machines that are probably worth more than some of our tablets, they're probably not even going to try to snatch them because they're big and heavy and bolted to the tables inside the vans and whatnot. And, they're going to look for stuff like this, I actually have a Craftsman toolbox inside my van with a lock. So it's locked. Granted, for me and you and Jareth and any other, rank it with a freaking, anyway. You know what I mean? We're going to open it, but the common thief that's just skilled enough to bust that door open and get in. There's not a whole lot in sight to take.
Oh, hey, we got someone here. Packlock. Andrew, what do you think about this right here?
Packlock.
We want him to take down a 2016 or new or Mustang door lock, since some of us still fight with the HU 100 in one.
Okay, well,
Come on.
I actually did a video
I gotta
of tearing one of them down because somebody got mad at me when I said that I could do one in 5 minutes, and they said bullshit. And then this was actually the Ford Focus, because that's the
Ford
one
Focus
that's got that deep little hole, and you got that one blade that you can't get out real easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat there and I did a video of me
you drill for it?
one down, and I was actually wrong. It didn't take me 5 minutes. It took me 2 minutes and 55 seconds describing what I was doing as I did it.
You're supposed to say filming one-handed is what you're supposed to say.
No. Actually, I used my phone clip, and I stuck my phone on a coffee can to hold it. But you see how dirty the front of my phone is? I never use that camera.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of funny comments about how you should clean your camera sometime. Because that's the one that goes up on the ear, so I never think about using that. I use this one here when I take pictures, but I couldn't get the phone to sit like this to take the video.
He says you hid the last clip you took out.
I can send it to you, Jareth, and you can put it on the wall.
Sure, do so.
All right.
Send it through the messenger real quick, and I'll throw it up. All right.
Yeah, it's going to take me a while to find it because it was a while ago.
Already.
Right here, Adam Garrity. For some reason, I can pick them easier in my hand. That's because you don't have all
that's what a lot of people
pressure.
say.
I don't know what it is, but it definitely picks easier if you pop that lock out. And it's just like every other modular lock with the Focus. It's one screw holds it in. You pop that thing out and back it out, and lock comes right on out.
Well, the thing is you're not fighting against the pressure of actually unlocking the door and moving all the extra linkages when you take it out. And that's why it's easier, because you have one less factor that you have to deal with. But in my opinion, once you got it out in your hand, why bother picking it when you can just take the damn thing apart? But that's because I'm old.
Right.
Okay, that's why I'm still not very good with the Lishy, is because I know I can take the damn thing apart just as quick.
I'm pretty good at picking HU 101 because there's a hard bind and a soft bind. And so that's how I keep tracking the lock, is if I am going through and I touch it and it sets
serrated.
Well, if it sets easily, then that's a soft bind. But if it's hard to set and I have to kerchunk it, that's a hard bind. And then I go back to the soft binds because typically they weren't ready to be set and they'll fall back up. So
all right, let me ask you the key question.
All right.
On average, how long does it take you to pick one of those?
Less than a minute.
Less than a minute. All right, so you definitely beat my disassembly time.
Yeah.
Same here.
My first HU 101 took me 8 months to pick. I spent a half an hour every day after work. I bought a Transit full-size door lock, put it together myself, mounted it in my vise, and every day after work, I spent a half an hour on that thing, and it took me 8 months before I picked it the first time.
God damn.
That's how bad I suck with the Lishy, okay?
Yeah.
I would never challenge anybody to a Lishy contest because I know how bad I suck.
Somebody crop that or cut that of Andrew saying he knows how bad he sucks. We'll put that on a loop.
Oh, yeah. I'm real bad at it.
It's a system that is like HU 100. It has rules, and once you learn the rules, you start to master the system, you know?
Yeah. You start to figure out, like, when you're decoding, like, if something doesn't seem right, why it doesn't seem right.
Well, I actually find the HU 100 to be just as easy as an FO38. I don't know. Maybe that's me. I don't know.
Around here, anyway, the HE100s I pick, they pluck right over. Like, I mean, you're talking
Right.
5 to 10 seconds, maybe not literally, but 10 to 15 seconds, 30 seconds tops, and they're popped open. But usually I'll have to pick them one way and then pick them the other way to decode and get a good decode. It just doesn't seem to matter. I index it the best I can, and it for me it just doesn't seem to matter with HU100. But I just chalk it up to sloppy ass GM locks. I always get it done. Sometimes I got to pick them twice and decode them twice, but we still get them done.
Damn, how long ago was that damn video?
At least you with a big print for old eyes. Mr. Packlock. He's gonna be at TLA, right?
I don't know.
Yep, there it is.
I don't know who
coming
that
to you,
account.
Gareth.
Hey, Packlock. Are you Bill? Is that Bill?
Yeah. Is that Packlock Bill?
I want to know. So
yeah, I want to know too.
If it's Bill, I'm going to treat you better. If it's not, then I'm just going to be like,
inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are you? So.
What's your
all
name?
right, Andrew, did you send me that? All right, I think you might have. Let me.
Well, I'm sending it to you, but it hasn't even given me a check mark in the circle yet. It's still working on it. Well, it's a 3-minute video, so it's going to take a bit.
And Andrew's still on.
That's Miss Packlock.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm on 5G Wi-Fi and all that shit.
Oh, okay.
It's right about 3/4 done. Actually, claiming to have sent.
There's currently a storm going on in my area, just in case I pop out or anything.
All right, well, it's been sent, so
okay.
You just
Eric,
check for receiving.
Take over for me.
Yep. Talk, Paul. Talk.
Here's our beautiful Paul.
Dude, you need a haircut. What's wrong with your hair? It's getting so long.
Yeah.
So Andrew, since you say you're not that great with the leashes,
yeah,
I'm guessing you don't practice a lot by opening vehicles with them, do you?
Well, you have to understand, I probably open 3 vehicles a year.
Really? You don't get a lot of lockouts there?
I was hoping we could talk about some under the window tools, since those are my favorite way to open vehicles.
Motherfucker.
Okay, well, I can still say I use the Slim Jim on a fairly regular basis on some of the repos I do. There's quite a few of them that a lot of people don't realize the Slim Jim has gone back to working. Like you get a 2010 or newer Silverado. You get some of the Impalas and Malibus.
Some of the Dodge Raider.
Dodge Raider. I'm trying to remember. That's a Nissan job, isn't it?
Did you say Raider?
Or is that the Mitsubishi one? Dodge Raider changed manufacturers a couple times.
I believe on the 2016 Rams, you can still use the.
Oh yeah.
You said Ram.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the newer F-150s, you can Slim Jim them things. I mean, the funniest thing in the world is when you get a 2018 F-150 and you walk up to the passenger door, because I got muscle memory. I've always done passenger door. You walk up there, you go clunk, click, open the door, you take a couple screws off, get the covers out of the way, you pull one clip off, you got the ignition in your hand, and you can decode the ignition, make yourself a key, put that back together, program it. The only pain in the ass is the active alarm. You got to wait that 10 minutes, wait for the beeps.
That's beautiful. I love that you have like a whole different method of, what we traditionally do today. Like that's so cool.
Yeah,
it's so old school. I love it.
There's a lot of chances. There's lots of chances for some of the old school methods to still work on the new stuff. But that does not mean that I don't grab my Lishy at least a couple of times a day to try to get better. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll sit there. If I'm doing a Dodge or a Ford, guaranteed I'm going to grab the Lishy first. I'm going to lube it up, and I'm going to sit there and fight with that Lishy. And if I have a problem, then I'll go back to the truck and get my flashlight and look in there to see where the deeps and the shallows are to see what I did wrong.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome, man. Yeah. So normally what I'll do, my first plan of attack is I'll just run in to the door with the leashy. And
here's the
if
video.
we're good, we're good. And then if we're not, we'll lube it and move on from there. But looks like Jarrett's got our video loaded up. Let's see what he's got here for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to excuse the fuzzy video.
That's okay.
There we are. All right, shit. Here we go.
Wait. 1 second. Remind us what this is.
Yeah, what are we watching?
As a Ford Focus door lock disassembly.
Okay. Beautiful. Let's see it.
And so we're going to have to do this with a makeshift camera stand. Now, we're going to disassemble this door lock for this Ford.
You know, I feel bad for these people who aren't tuning in right now. Just saying. I'm just saying. This is cool shit.
I know. I've disassembled a couple of these when I was young, newer.
Take the junk off in the back. Piece of cake.
Yes, get the junk off the back.
Now this first
my man
clip or retainer hides right in here.
Well,
in this
how to
slot.
learn something
That was
here.
the easy one.
That's the easy one.
Pin driver.
Yeah.
And knock them out. See?
Yep.
Oops.
That's the easy one.
See them sticking up? Piece of cake.
Yeah, sometimes the pin driver don't want to come back out either.
All right. Now this guy, he's the one that hides in the deep dark hole and everybody hates him. So what I do,
You do drill for it. Yes, my man.
You make a side door.
Yes.
Right there.
I do the same shit when I take those up.
Oh, once upon a time, I was holding a lock in my hand and I was drilling. And so I was like, this isn't enough force. So I put the drill down on the table and I put my hand here and I was drilling and it was a small bit and I snapped the bit and it went through my thumb completely. And you holding that damn bit like that is just giving me PTSD. I just want to tell you that right now.
That's just because Jareth fucking he doesn't know how to use power
hand.
tools. He fucks himself up on everything.
I'm fucking
put a million
retarded,
holes
okay?
in my hand.
Yeah.
I'm just used to it. That's part of the job.
Jareth puts a Phillips screwdriver through his hand. Don't worry.
Oh God, I'll put a fucking
I've
piece
done
of
that.
bread through my hand. You know,
Hey, scars are sexy.
they're not working for me.
Yeah. That's it. Yep.
God damn, my anxiety's off the charts, Andrew.
I have
That's
to
exactly
tell you,
how I do it.
when you start to hit,
everybody has their favorite drill bit. Mine is the 7/64.
Oh my God.
Mine is an 1/8" double-sided Irwin bit.
there we go.
The 1/8 inch is too damn big.
It is,
Showing this
but
light.
in this instance it is, but it's a damn good bit for a
Yeah,
lot of
I'm
things.
showing the hole that I did. You poke in there underneath it. You pry that
Mhm.
bitch up.
This really doesn't show in this light.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
you get
And then
underneath
he's gonna
it
knock
and
that other
lift
pin
it
out.
out of the hole.
It is right there. Then you can get in there.
That same pin he drove out on the first side, it's sitting there on the table. It's got the little flap there.
Pop this fellow
He's
out.
gonna knock that same one out.
And you can see.
Yeah, it's the same design.
pretty well.
Andrew, I started out the way you do now.
Doesn't really show too well in the camera, of course, but she's popped up just enough that you can pry her up.
Knock that cylinder out.
way up.
Yeah, everybody's done that.
All the way out.
Malachi's done like me. He's a brother in arms or a brother in bits.
Yeah.
Well, that's like you ain't a locksmith until you put a hole in your hand and dump the penny kit.
Exactly. Or until you explode a lock because you forgot to put the tailpiece back on.
The casing.
Yeah, that too. And there it is. There's everybody you need.
Hold on now. Let's go back to that money shot.
Which one?
The work appropriate one.
Right there.
There it is. Bam.
All the wafer sticking out on each side.
Not bad.
Now, if you just imagine how fast I could do it if I'm not sitting there explaining every step like I did in that video.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was a 3-minute video for sure. Mm-hmm.
And that was because I took the time to explain what I was doing as I was doing it. So when I'm just sitting there in my truck just doing it, I'm just like bada bing, bada boom, and I'm done.
Absolutely.
Like the old Saginaw, you got it down to a science.
Well,
That's how I did it when I first started out before I learned how to use the leashy.
Well, that's the main reason why I still suck with the leashy is because I'm so fast at the other methods. I'll spend a couple seconds on the leashy, and then I'm like, yeah, fuck this. I'm going the other way. I mean, honestly, that's the truth. I don't put enough practice at the leashy only because I know I can do the other so much better.
There's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, whatever gets the job done. Because, when I was a mechanic, we going back to that whole working on cars and shit, we get paid book time. Book time might say, hey, to change this control arm on your make and model car is like a 3-hour job. So my fucking goal is to get that done in less than 3 hours, because if I get it less than 3 hours, I make money. So if I figure out a way to do it that takes less time, I done made money. You know what I mean? So if I get it done in 1 hour and it pays 3 hours, I just got paid for 3 hours and I worked 1. So,
I do a Honda
different
ignition.
methods to everything. You can sit there and follow all data and follow the book and do it the way they say it, or you can figure out your own way to do it. And sometimes the long way is faster than the short way. I've run into where I've watched guys in the same shop as me struggle to change a ball joint on a car, where they are trying their damnedest to take as little apart as possible and get that control arm to come down, and they're fighting with it and they're hammering on it and they're hitting it with a torch. And I'll go in there and I'm just like, you know what? Who cares? It's 3 more bolts to take apart. And I'll take that shit apart, get the bolts out, change the control arm, or change the ball joint, and I'm done. And I've done the ball joint faster than they did, and they were trying to shortcut it while I took a different method. So, it's all about, whatever works. If taking the lock out and drilling that one pin out gets it done for you faster than you can use a leashy, then that's the way to go for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I said, in the shop, it was the same thing. I watched the guys, like I said, they struggle pulling down on a pry bar, trying to get this control arm down and get the ball joint separated from the knuckle, or, and it is what it is. But, I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, I watch you guys sit here and fight with it for 25, 30 minutes to get that out so you can avoid taking out 2 bolts. I've done pulled the 2 bolts out, got the shit out, and I'm done.
I could actually translate that argument into a Honda ignition.
Exactly.
I'll take that bitch off the column in a heartbeat, because those shear-headed bolts don't mean nothing to me.
Right.
I'll take the damn thing out and I'll sit at my workbench all nice and comfortable and take it apart there.
Right.
They're sitting there. They're trying to reach around backwards to get the 4 screws that hold the covers over the ignition. I mean, that one, you got to use an offset Phillips and all sorts of weird stuff. And then you got to worry about if it's got the relocker, you got to have another special tool just to reset the relocker. I got the damn thing sitting in my workbench. I'm nice and comfortable in my truck.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever's the fastest method for the person working on it is really the way to go.
Right.
Because, like you said, you're gonna bust some shear bolts out. I have small, real low profile ratchets with real low profile Phillips. I'm gonna get that screw out real fast, and I'm gonna not
Right.
take the shear bolts out. But before I had that, I'm taking the shear bolts out.
What does this mean right here? Got no choice on the fit. Is he talking about reverse?
No, the
I'm
Honda
not sure.
Fit.
I haven't run into
The
too
Honda
many.
Fit. There's some of the Hondas are a little awkward to get to the shear-headed bolts, and they're also some of the Hondas are a little awkward to try to get to those 4 screws. It's really a matter of you got to learn how to get to the target that you want to go for. Now, when I do the shear-headed bolts, I've got a chisel that's 6 inches long.
He says, I like to use my multi-tool to take the gluten
I can get
off.
down there with the hammer, and like on the Volkswagens, I use my hammer sideways so I don't hit the ceiling of the instrument cluster.
Yeah.
And dumb little things like that makes it just a little bit easier. And you have to just find something that works best for you.
I use an electric hammer for shear heads, and
Exactly.
I recorded a job I did 2 days ago, and my my rookie was filming for me, right? Because it's so rare that I have someone to hold the camera for me. I'm usually left-handed, one-handed, and I was like, "Here, Rook, hold this for me," and he saw me go, "Kara, kara," and he was like, "Whoop," and stopped filming. He's like, "I just want to shake your hand." I was like, "Rookie, what the fuck are you doing? Film. I'm working here." He had never seen like the shear heads like just come loose like that, and I was like, dude, I got tired long ago like messing with those. And another locksmith, the guy who sold me the electric hammer, like he put it up on Locksmith Marketplace, and he was like 4 shear head bolts, and I was like, sold. You know what I mean?
I got to try that just to see. I'm always open to something new. I've never tried an electric hammer before.
Oh my god, it's so quick.
Give it a try.
I could potentially load my footage, but I'd have to run away and grab my phone.
Well, you can always do that on next week's meeting.
True, yeah.
Show everybody how you do it. I mean, because I'm curious.
It was pretty cool, Sometimes it goes real smoothly. Like I couldn't put them back in as easy as they came out, and that's kind of an odd problem to have. You know what I mean?
That's where Home Depot is your friend, or Lowe's, or Ace, or wherever. Just go match them bitches up and carry some extras on the van. That's what I do.
my buddy Dan Mandel, he carries a bunch of hex head screws. Once he gets the shear head bolts out, he throws them away, puts in his own hex head screws.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do the same shit. Sometimes they're straight up Phillips head screws. As long as they're stainless steel, I'm not worried about them. Shit.
I just reuse the ones I took out. If I can get them out with a hammer and chisel, I can put them back in with a hammer and chisel.
Yeah, yes, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I've done it before, but at the end of the day, these days, I charge enough that at 30 cents, I'm not worried about. I keep them on the van, and I just throw them in there.
I started carrying the replacement shear head pumps.
Absolutely, though. I've done the same shit, though. Throw them things right back in. I knocked them loose with an automatic punch. I'm going to run them back in as far as I can and then knock them tight with an automatic punch.
Right. Yeah, because I don't want to have to worry about more stock. I already have to worry about keeping track of all the damn key blanks. What if I forget to buy more screws?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's where I'm at, is I don't want to have to worry about keeping stock on extra screws.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah. I want to chime in right here that my electric hammer trick doesn't destroy the shear heads, so I can reuse them.
Right.
Yeah.
Clarify.
I'd love to see your video on that. I really would. So on your next one of these things, you need to bring that up and have it ready so that we can sit here in the audience and watch it.
Yeah, for sure. No problem. I can do that. What advice would you have for somebody, like you've given advice on ignition housing repairs? We've seen some you taking apart an HU 101. So if somebody is struggling with the leashy, what advice would you give somebody if they wanted to learn to sight read or impression?
Okay. Well, impressioning, that would be a long-winded thing. I would have to spend quite a bit of time. Uh, the biggest thing for impressioning is prepping the blank. I really, it just bugs the hell out of me when somebody says they shine the key, because you don't shine the key. You don't shine the bitch. You don't want to make a mirror. You want to shine your mirror. You don't want to shine a key. You got the key, and you run the file in a regular grid work so that you have exacting lines on an angle, all parallel to each other, all lined up all the way down the length of the blade, so that when you work the key, which is another subject again, when you work the key, anything that binds up against that key is going to leave an imperfection. Any imperfection is a potential mark. Now, you will get some imperfections that are actually just a blank hitting against the body of the lock. So you really have to understand the spacing of your key so that you can say, nope, this is a dirt mark. Nope, that's just part of the body. Yep, that one there is a mark from a tumbler. So you have to differentiate that. But the trick is if you have all of those lines all parallel to each other, they will actually give you a better chance of seeing any imperfection that shows up, no matter how minor. And that is your starting point right there. And you want to have really good lighting. The worst thing in the world for me is fluorescent lighting, because that light is coming from everywhere all at the same time, and it kind of blinds you, and you can't see what the fuck is going on. The best thing in the world is a cloudy day. That is the best, because you can hold it towards the sun, and you get a gradual light in this gradual general direction, and then all the imperfections really stand out well. Now, if you're doing it at nighttime, then you got a flashlight and you hold it on the other side of the key, facing down under the key, so that only the penumbra of your flashlight, not the direct light, but the penumbra, the splash over, is actually hitting the key. And then you can get that same kind of lighting that you get from a cloudy day.
So
then it's easier to spot the imperfections.
When Jareth comes to visit,
yeah,
we're gonna come to you.
Oh, hey, we got a great place called Pick and Pull.
Oh yeah,
and then you're gonna show us your method of impressioning, because my best method of impressioning is what Jareth taught me, which is almost a polar opposite of what you just said. And you've been in Virginia Beach doing locksmith work longer than I've been alive. So I want to see how you do it. I want to see the marks that you see, and I want to know from an old school guy, the true method of impressioning. And I think Jareth would learn something too, as good as he is. And I'm not scared to say, as much as I know, as smart as I am, that he's a better locksmith than I am. And like I said, I learned to impression from him, and his method is entirely different. The first thing we do is we take our file and run it against the key and polish that bitch up nice and smooth and look for our marks on there. And it's worked pretty good for me overall. I wouldn't say I'm the godsend or the master of impressioning, but I would love absolutely love more than anything in the world, I'm sure Jareth would too, to sit side by side with you, an old school guy who has, you know, that's how you started. You know what I mean? You didn't have Leashy. It wasn't easy to just take a GM side.
Look at
You
that.
know what I mean? I would love me and the both of us. I promise
right
you,
now.
we would love to sit there with you and just even just one lock, just impression a key, because I have to know how this goes. I got to know how you do it.
Okay, pause. Nope.
The best way.
Look at this. Look at this. Hold on.
I only impression as last resort. I use Leashy now.
No. This one.
Sharpie on the blade.
Fight me.
Fight me.
All right,
Yeah.
now there is some schools that actually do use smoking and Sharpies.
He's not
as a
talking about
method
bit and barrel.
But no, it can work as well on impressioning. It just does not work as well, in my opinion. But that's, you know what they say about opinions, right?
Yeah, they're like assholes.
Everybody's got one, and everybody else says it stinks.
Well,
all right?
Real quick, like my method is like, I feel like the grid or the lines obstruct me, and I mirror polish it. I take like I get all that ugly brass away, the uneven stuff.
Right.
And then I take the blade, and you know what I'm talking about. I saw in your description exactly that you know what I'm talking about. Going just like this, you can create lines, right?
Right.
But I like to push forward just a hair as I do it, so it creates a mirror finish. And then whenever I put the key in, I can see where my mirror finish is obstructed. So it's kind of a, you see what I'm saying?
Well, I see what you're saying.
And I can find it.
It's a very similar thing, except that sometimes the only mark you get is a shiny spot. And
right.
If you've made it nothing but shiny, how are you going to see a shiny spot?
Because it's an impression, and the light will kind of bend just barely. Like I've trained my eyes. It's hard to tell somebody who.
Oh no,
I know you know, but like the people watching who don't impression, like whenever it's a mirror finish, the light bounces off in a certain way, and whenever I tilt the blank, I can see it. You know, it catches. It's hard to explain. But then once you see the spacings, you've got it. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I find it's easier to find those imperfections if you have that perfect grid line that I like. That's just my method.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting that they're almost, you know.
Oh yeah, they're very opposite of each other, but yet the same.
Yeah.
I could tell you, Derek Hooker and I have had some really fun arguments.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, they were nasty arguments. After a while, they were just friendly arguments because we just learned to agree to disagree. You know, but you know, there are many styles. The one thing I really believe in is impressioning is an art. It is not really a science. It's an art.
Now we disagree again.
Okay, well, you know that I'm just giving my opinion here.
I know, and
I firmly believe that lock talks to me.
Me too. I feel like I'm a detective, and I'm forensically like I'm encouraging the lock to do something I want it to. You know, like the lock wants.
Tell me what's wrong.
Yeah.
And then let me fix it. That's what the lock is doing. It's telling you what's wrong, and then you fix it with your file.
Yeah. It's kind of weird, right? Like, I don't know.
Well, that's one of the biggest things that me and Derek disagree. He calls it a science. I call it an art.
I see it more as a science, and I understand it too. Like, because I would say lock picking is an art, you know? And some people would say it's a science, but lock picking is a lot of touch and feel and stuff you can't really, you know, articulate through like text and stuff like that.
Well, you cannot quantify it,
Right.
then it is not a science. And that's the same way with impressioning.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that I cannot quantify, but I can instinctively say, that's a fake mark, that's a real mark.
But isn't the mark quantifying itself, though, because it exists?
Yes, but if it exists, is it a fake mark or a real mark? How can you tell the difference if it's still a mark?
Through trial and error, experience?
You have to make a judgment as to whether that mark, is it lying to you, or does it need to go deeper?
So your line is that inference is required in order to be proficient at this task. So the inference of knowing false from true is where it becomes an art form.
Yes, you have to really feel the way the lock is acting. You can't just go in there like a machine and expect it to act the same way every time. Just like with picking a lock. It's the same kind of thing. It is an art. Because you are judging the imperfections of that lock. If that lock was perfectly built, you would never be able to pick it. You would never be able to impression it. But that lock is not perfect, and you have to find the imperfections, and you have to work on those imperfections to create a way around the problem.
I agree. It's a unique exploitation. Like, impressioning has been around for hundreds of years. Yeah, since locks have existed. And people used to take wax from their candles in like the 1700s, and they used to mold keys that they would put into keyways and impression, and then they would file and whatever. And nowadays, I feel like it's possible to impression high security locks. What do you think about that?
Well, I have in the past, back in the old Mercedes from the 80s and 90s, I have impressioned them. I used my matrix, my high security duplicator, as my file because it was really handy because it had two handles, so I could really just nudge just a little bit of metal off.
Yeah.
And then go back to the lock with my vice grips, work it a few times, rock it just like you would with a regular key, and it would leave a mark. And I'd go back to my machine, back in my truck. I mean, it took forever because you had to walk back and forth between the car and the truck every damn time. It's not like you're just sitting there with your file going. But I could impression missing cuts using my matrix.
Yep.
But that back then, you have to understand the tumblers were made better. You would never, ever want to try to impression an HU100 because the damn tumblers are made out of aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
Them stupid things will fail under regular use. Now, you might want to try an HU101 because the tumblers are built a little bit better and stronger. It depends on how much time you have because it's probably going to take you a while. I've never tried, so I really couldn't say. I wouldn't trust a Honda because those damn things fail just from use. So that's another one I wouldn't even try.
They're the worst.
Oh, yeah. It was the stupidest damn design I've ever seen.
So I want to tell you, like, when I was beginning, I was a high security lockpicker. There was a guy on the forums. His name was Farmer Freak. He was on key picking and lockpicking 101, like the OG lockpicking groups of the time. And whenever the Ford Fiesta came out, HU101 was introduced, and he was picking them.
Horseshoe says don't do it.
Yeah, he was picking them with dual fork tension wrench and probes. And after he would pick them, he would insert a tiny LED at the mouth of the keyway, and he could visually sight read HU101 whenever it was first put out. And so exposure to that at a young age or in the beginning of my career, like, I always wonder why people don't do that nowadays.
Well, obviously they don't do it nowadays because we have a better system now. Because now we do have things like the Lishy.
but people still struggle with the leashy, and
Well,
it's weird to me that like at resting height an HU 101 is still gonna be readable. You know what I mean?
have you actually looked inside an HU 101 while it was at rest?
No. So I'm talking out of
Okay.
my ass.
Well, there's real simple ways on a wafer tumbler lock to make it so that you cannot read the lock at rest. All you have to do is vary a few certain parameters of the tumbler. Okay. Have you ever looked at the tumblers and noticed there's notches in the middle?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, those notches sit up against the ridge inside the lock. Now, if the notch on a number 2 is the same as a notch on a number 4, they're going to look inside the same.
This is why there's a soft bind whenever they're being picked,
Right. But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I never really
But
realized
that will mess with any kind of sight reading like you would with a standard wafer lock. Mazda started doing that back in the late 90s when they changed their tumblers. You could sight read a 93 Mazda, but you can't sight read a 98 Mazda. Even though the outside dimensions of the tumbler are the same, they added notches in the top and the bottom so that at rest, they don't rest the same as the older versions. They rest the same as each other.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Shit. Well, that explains that. That's why we don't do that. So I guess that's why we would only.
There's quite a few tricks that they could do to make a tumbler at rest not rest exactly the same every time.
Yeah. I never really thought about a countermeasure for sight reading a lock at rest. And it makes so much sense now, like why certain wafers are serrated. Like I never realized like that was a countermeasure, And
Right.
you spoke to me a long time ago about MZ27 changing to MZ31, but they're like technically the same keyway, aren't they?
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
how did that work?
Well, I mean, the basic keyway, they just, most of the time, Mazda started out back in like 91 or 92 when they first came up with that 10 key. And I swear they had 20 different shaped heads throughout the generations. But they had one big major problem in that the way they designed it, the first 8 cuts out of 10 were in the ignition, and that used the shoulder stop. And the last 8 cuts were in the door, and that used the tip stop. So every time you turn the key in the door, it puts sideways pressure on the third cut in the key. So the original keys were too thin because of the extra side millings, and they kept breaking the keys off in the door. So what they did is on the later ones, they just got rid of the side millings completely, made it solid.
And that's the MZ31.
Yes, and that solved the problem of the breaking keys right off the bat.
I love it.
Was the only difference. So you could use the older keys in the new cars. You just got to worry about them breaking the keys off in the door.
I love it because like I had a pack-a-punch that would cut MZ27, but it wouldn't cut MZ31. And I was like, the dimensions are technically the same, and the wording's different, So that explains.
Well, yeah, because it wasn't sitting there right.
Exactly.
Right.
Eric, you were wanting to say something?
Yeah, Andrew, if we were to want to sight read a lock,
all right,
what would be the easiest one to get started with? Like just learning, like I've never actually personally sight read a lock. Like I'd love to learn that skill because even though we have leashy and this, that, and the other, and I can take the fucking lock apart and everything else. Right. Every skill you can expand upon, only helps you further. So what would
Oh,
be
yeah, yeah.
a good one to start with to be easy to, to learn with?
The easiest one you could ever try to sight read would be the Ford the 38 FO 38.
FO38? Okay.
Yeah, that would be by far the easiest thing to sight read. You can do that. Well, not with this pick because this is double ball. With a regular pick and a flashlight, you
Mhm.
use the pick to hold the shutter out of the way, shine the flashlight in there. I even posted a couple of pictures on the automotive page, and you can actually tell what the depth is by how far it hangs down
Okay.
or hangs up from the bottom. Because you
Okay.
got 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom.
Mhm.
You got the first
So is
one on
it
the bottom,
the
second
further
on the top,
down,
on
the deeper
bottom.
the cut?
Say what?
Is the further down the deeper the cut, or the
No.
more shallow?
The further into the keyway, the deeper the cut.
Okay.
Okay, like if you're sitting there and you see two tumblers that are, sorry, I'm trying to do this by the camera. If they're
Yeah.
almost touching each other, almost guaranteed those two are both 5s. If
Gotcha.
they're real far apart, like a number 1 just barely shows anything. Number 2 shows a little bit more. A number 3 is right about even with the side milling marks of. Oh, he's showing pictures now on his camera.
Yeah. You keep
Side
talking.
marks
We just ignore Jared. We're taking over his shit.
and a number 4 is going to be just a little bit below the side milling marks of the keyway.
Okay.
So you can actually judge by how it compares to the side millings of the keyway. And that's super easy on the Ford. That's the easiest one you could ever sight read.
Okay. That's good to know because I run into some Fords, and they're I'm sure you've run into them where the locks are pretty shitty condition, and generally my first thumb rule is just go in there with the leash and try to pick it. Doesn't want to play nice. We'll spray it with some Houdini, WD-40, whatever kind of lubricant we have on the van. Usually I use Houdini just because it's just what I started with and it works. Right. So
but
I'll spray it with Houdini.
I want you to imagine you're walking up to that Ford. You got your Lishy ready. You got your clipper ready. You got your key blanks ready. And look, you dropped your Lishy and you stepped on it and broke the bitch.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
My next approach is I'm going to take the lock apart. But, a guy like you're just going to open the shutter and look down that bitch and read it. And I want to acquire that skill too.
Well, you have to have a plan B, plan C, plan D, and everything else.
Exactly.
You have to have a backup for everything you do, because there's always more than one way to skin a cat.
Yes.
And you want to know.
Derek learned from me, and I learned from him.
Because you never know if your favorite way suddenly fails you. What the fuck are you gonna do? If you're a one-trick pony, what the hell are you gonna do?
Exactly.
Can I show? Do you want to see the electric hammer?
Yes, but I'm gonna go get a pack of cigarettes out of my truck before you start the video.
Okay, no problem. So that actually that offers me a ample opportunity to load this video to the stream, so I don't have to show my phone. So Eric. What did you learn about sight reading while I was away? Did he talk about looking at the? Yes, please. You got it. Did he talk about looking at the keyway and seeing like left over right?
He talked about height versus height. So the further it hangs down into the keyway, the deeper the cut, which is as I expected. And then the less shallow, the number 1 cuts are barely going to show. and I kind of expected that's what it would be, but confirmation from an old school guy, professional guy like Andrew is always welcome, and
You'll
that's what I
also
want.
find it
That's what I
very
wanted to know for sure because, like I said, I'm not the guy to just look down a shutter and sight read. I've only been in the business 3 years. I've only been making keys for 3 years, and as you know, I started out just taking locks apart before I put the headphones on, ignored all the YouTube videos, and said, "I'm going to pick a lock, and I'm not going to listen to the clicks."
well. You can also find sight reading will come in handy when you're dealing with stupid little cabinets like a Y11 or anything like that that they don't even make a Lishy for. So you
Yeah,
don't even have that option. So
yeah.
now you've got
And
sight
see, that's
reading
where I jump into
impression
like,
or
oh,
pick
I
it
got to
take it
impression
apart.
this lock or take it apart.
Right.
So, learning to be able to just, push the shutter open with a flashlight, look down there and sight read. That's like you said, another good skill to have
Well,
because, sometimes, and I'm sure you've run into it too, sometimes it can be a bitch to impression a key. I hit you up that one time when I was trying to mess with that old MG and I was having a hard time impressioning that key. You remember that? I had the ignition in my hand. I had
yeah.
picked that bitch open. I got the ignition turned on in my hand, and I still couldn't extract it to read the cuts, and I still had to sit there and impression the key, and it was a nightmare. I mean, I got it done, and I feel accomplished because I got it done, but at the same time, like, dude, I didn't charge enough for that job because I thought, oh, I'll just go in there and just real quick impression, but it was not easy to impression that key.
Well, it that's because you
And
haven't
I had two
practiced
key
that.
blanks, two
Yeah.
that I could find in the country, two.
Now let me ask you, how many hours a day? I'm just using the term hours. Do you work with your Lishy, and how many hours a day do you work with impressioning?
Yeah, so
So you see
for
that
me
that's the real
personally,
difference.
yeah, exactly, and that's a big difference between what you did and what is today.
Right.
Is almost everything I do today I can just shove a leashy down the lock and pick it, decode it, and cut a key. So, I
Right.
have
And
a lot of time since I learned to use the leashy. I have a lot of time and a lot of practice with it. As Jared said, unlocking vehicles, just going to a lockout. Oh, look, my keys in the car. What do I do? I'm going to show up and I'm going to leashy that thing open, even if it takes me 5 minutes because I'm still new and I don't know, the ins and outs of using this leashy very well. You know, 5, 10, 15 minutes, I'm still going to get it done. And I'm going to use the leashy because that's practice. And then the
right.
next one I do, it's going to be faster. And the next one is so and so is forth. So,
Right. And
a lot of them we
that's
get
basically
done in 30 to 60 seconds. We can have them open with the leashy and then decode it. And so that makes our lives easy because, it makes our lives easy because we don't have to do what you guys had to do back in the day. You
well,
know,
that
so
that's basically it's a flip screen. That's why I'm not good with the Lishy, is because I spent so much time with the file and the vice grips.
exactly,
I
exactly.
actually had
And
a
see, I
contest.
you like you probably want to get better with the leashy. I want to get better with the vice scripts and the damn file.
Right.
So I practice with the file and the vice scripts when I can, and when the opportunity presents. But at the end of the day, we have a job to do, and we need to be quick and efficient to get on to the next one.
Right.
So if I have the leashy available to me to do the job, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leashy it. I'm going to decode it. I'm going to cut the key and be done, and on my way to the next one.
Well,
Whereas, back in the day, that wasn't an option. So every job took a little bit longer. But when I get the calls for those older jobs that there's no leashy, I'm going to take them. And if it takes me a little bit longer, so be it, because I want to get good at those old cars, because eventually, as we move forward, those old cars are going to become classics. People are going to want them. They're going to want keys for them. And the skill that you have is going to become a dying art form.
Well,
And that's what I want. I want that dying art form. I want to know, like, hey, this guy made keys to cars back in the 60s. I want to still be able to do that shit while I make keys to cars in the 2060s. You know what I mean? Like,
well, let me tell you about one time when I was teaching a young fellow a few things, and he showed up when I was doing a couple of repos. And one of the cars that we had to make keys to was a 2009 Malibu. Nothing big fancy, all right? And you'd be like, yeah, let me just list you the door, right?
right. Normally,
Well,
yeah.
I had a contest with him. I sat down in the driver's seat, closed the door. I sat there with my vice grips and my file, and he sat there outside the car with his list sheet. And we tried to see if we could get a lock to turn faster. I beat him by about 10 seconds. I impressioned the ignition before he could list you the door. So,
That's one of two things. One, you were a straight fucking OG. Two, he sucked.
Well, he still had a lot of learning to do. I know he wasn't the fastest list sheet you could ever see. Okay,
Mhm.
He's not Jareth Garza. Okay. But the point is, you still think that impressioning takes half an hour to an hour.
No, and it doesn't. And I can attest to that because I've impressioned quite a few keys. It didn't take me no more than 5 minutes.
Right. There a lot of them you can knock out. And now the Malibu ignition, that's got a sidebar.
Yeah.
But the way that lock was designed, the wafers still have to ride in their chambers, and they bind up faster than the sidebar does. So the Z keyway ignitions in the dashboard are quite easy to impression, and they will actually mark better than the door locks do.
So
that is
they protrude.
the most important piece of information that's ever been displayed on
They
YouTube
protrude?
ever.
Is that what you're telling me? They protrude from the ignition, and then they have to still be pulled into the V notch of the sidebar?
Yes, the size of the slot for the sidebar is huge.
Uh-huh.
The size of the chambers for the tumblers are much more exact, so that the tumblers actually will bind in their chambers before the sidebar even connects. It's the same thing with the Mazda. The Mazda used to have a sidebar ignition, but it was the same thing. The tumblers would ride in their chambers and bind faster than the sidebar would bind into its corner. So you could easily get marks in a Mazda ignition.
Now,
and the thing is the ignition is more solidly built into the dashboard than the door lock is into the door, so you don't have as much play of the lock moving around on you. So it's more solid, so you can put more pressure on it and you can get better marks.
Man,
going to Mazda real quick. Just going to Mazda real quick. How many of those do you run into where you pull, one screw out of the door lock and there's no cut code there to, impression the where it seems feasible to impression the ignition?
Well, most of those, if the door lock has got one screw on the edge, I can just look through the water hole and just see the cuts.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's one of the ones with the flush handle and you got to take it all apart, I'll just sit down in the driver's seat and impression the bitch.
Okay.
I'll get the first 8 cuts out of the ignition. I'll get it out of the car, put my foot on the tire, And bada bing, bada boom, I got the last 2 cuts in a heartbeat.
Okay. Now I just asked out of curiosity because I don't get a whole lot of Mazdas where I live. I don't know why it is, but I just don't.
Well,
Um,
usually
but every
Mazda does.
Mazda I've rolled up on, I've been able to pop. I know what you're talking. I know you're not going to know what I'm talking about. The little plastic cover, and you pull one bolt, and the door lock comes out, and
Yeah,
the
and the
code has
and the
always
code
been
is
on the
up
door lock.
underneath, so you got to flip it upside down just to read
Yeah,
the code.
yeah, but the code's always there. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the code's there. You cut the key, bam! It fucking turns every lock on the car. Um, so I'm just curious, like how far back in years do you go in Mazda before it becomes easier to just impression the ignition as opposed to just popping the door lock out and getting the code?
Well, that's the point. As soon as back when they had the flush handles, then you had to take the door panel off and get to the screws inside the door panel. So fuck all that, just impression it. As
Okay,
soon as they put the bolt on the edge of the door, the code's on the lock. You just take that bolt out, flip the damn thing upside down, read the code, cut your key.
gotcha. Okay,
Just do it the lazy shit way.
yeah, yeah. So I ask out of curiosity because I like to know, these kinds of things. And
I mean, I don't do things the hard way just because I have to. I
yeah,
only do the hard way when I want when that's the best way.
I kind of figured as much as well. I'm the same way. If I don't have to take the damn door lock apart, I'm not going to anymore anyway because now I know how to pick the locks. But starting out, you're going to start the hard way because you don't know anything, or at least that's the way I did.
Well,
The
yeah,
hard
but
way.
now I'm
But
now
for
I'm
me, taking the door panel apart, that was like this because I was a mechanic for 15
Come on,
years. What
Adam.
the
He
hell?
still wants to play with the graphite.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. Show us your graphite, and I'll show you my hammer. It sounds so
Yeah,
gay.
show us your graphite jackhammer.
He wants to see my jackhammer, guys. I don't know.
Go for it. Do it. You're the
All right,
boss.
So
All right, man. I'll show you my hammer.
Pull the door lock out when necessary, but these days it's not as much necessary as it was back then. And like I said, now that I've learned the leashy, and I've got the, as Jareth would say, the 100-year touch, where you can feel where a wafer is not truly binding, and maybe it feels like it's binding, or it is binding, and you pick it, but it overpicks, and you got to kind of release a little bit of tension. It's the leash is kind of both a factor of, in my opinion, science and art. There's a science to it where myself, Paul, and Jareth can teach you the scientific way of doing it, which is going to be under perfect conditions, under perfect lab conditions where the lock is absolutely flawless. And there's going to be what Jareth calls, and what other have called, the 100-year touch, where you kind of get the point of figuring out where, like, okay, I'm kind of plucking on this one, and it feels like it's binding, and maybe it's not binding, and I'm gonna pull on it anyway, and maybe it oversets, and then I can identify that it's overset, so I'm gonna release, and then that whole game and dance, but it's between that and taking the lock apart and impressioning. It's like 3 different methods, and to me it's just like a whole, which way do you go, which way is the best, which cars have codes on them. If a Mazda has a code on it or a Toyota has a code on it, am I going to pick the lock or am I going to go for the door? You know what I mean? If the Toyota has,
that's what differentiates. Like
the Toyota has the code, the easy, one bolt, pull the door out, and the code is there. That's the way we're going. That's why I'm going to go. Any one of the 3 of us are going to go that way. But if it's say an 8-cut Toyota and it's on the passenger side, and we're gonna rip that door panel apart, and as a mechanic and something that's easy to rip apart, I still don't want to rip that damn door panel apart. I'm gonna leash you that damn thing, and maybe
Eric,
you
Hey,
haven't done a lot of leashing.
Eric.
Maybe you might impression me.
Eric,
Eric, take a breath. We're gonna watch a video.
yeah. We're gonna watch the video real quick.
Ah,
What's that? What's that?
We're gonna try and knock
let's see.
loose.
What we got?
All right, so now, what were we discussing about?
Oh, this Jared. Blah, 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 blah.
What were we discussing about? Like shear heads, right? Technique, like differences and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I
Let's
mentioned
do
the electric hammer, so let's take a look real quick. Shift 8.
All that beautiful beam footage.
Roll that beat footage.
Roll that B-roll,
Okay, we
baby.
got
Let's see it.
shear
Wait,
heads that we're gonna
wait.
try and knock loose.
Jared, pause. What is this blue thing?
That is
That's a punch.
fucking punch, bro. That's a steel hammer chisel thing that my rookie supplied me. So
It's a Harbor
Yeah.
Freight special.
let's listen. Let's listen, okay? I like the sound of this hammer. Here we go.
No. I'm asking out of honesty. Is that a punch that comes with your hammer, or is that something you bought separate?
No, no, it's just separate.
Okay, I'm just asking because it's really small.
I don't have a lot
That's
of
what
space
she
right
said.
here, but we'll see what happens.
Not you.
I think. Yep, that one's spinning. Oops.
Fucking hit my hand.
Okay, you're both knocked free.
Love it.
Hey, stop. I'm gonna stop for a second.
So that's where rookie cut it, and was like, he was like, oh shit, hold on, let me escape real quick. He was like, I've got to shake your hand real quick. I've never seen anything like that before. I was like, dude, I'm trying to get you to like see the footage of the screw turning, but you know, I think it was pretty good for him because we've struggled a lot with these damn bolts. And I swear to God, that's the best solution I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It seems like pretty much about the same as what I use with a regular hammer, except that I actually use a slightly different punch.
Mm-hmm.
I sent you pictures on doing the Volkswagens where I use a center punch that I ground down to a point. And that's what I use for the Volkswagens because it's such a tiny area to work with. But now when I do the Hondas, I use a regular cold chisel. Just like, I guess that's what, 3/16 wide for most of the other shear-headed bolts. But usually it's only a matter of few hits that I get it.
Yeah. I like to use a flat chisel, so like the electric hammer will put a nice line in it, so that sometimes I can get a screwdriver and just back them out the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Mark Stewart, his favorite way once he gets them loose is he takes his impact screwdriver with a Phillips bit, puts it in reverse, and puts it down next to the screw so that while it's spinning the screwdriver tip in reverse, it's actually spinning the screw too.
That's pretty fucking smart.
He's mentioned that a couple of times on the Zoom meetings. He'll take his power screwdriver, stick it down next to the screw, hit reverse, and it'll actually spin it out that way. So
like
because the edge of the screwdriver is banging on the edge of the shear-headed bolt, and it'll spin it. So that's another option there too. Once you got it loose, is to use another power screwdriver to do that. Me, I don't bother because that's just one more tool I got to carry to the damn car, and I hate carrying tools.
Every time I need to use my damn electric hammer, the battery's dead.
Yeah.
So I typically fall back on the old, manual hammer, a hammer. So
Well, yeah, it's just like every time I go to reach for my impact screwdriver, I realize it's at the hobby shop because that's where I use it.
uh-huh.
It's not in my truck.
It never ceases to fail.
Oh yeah, that's why I don't really get into a lot of power tools on most of my jobs, is because I don't keep them there. I keep them for my hobbies.
Uh-huh.
I got 2 drills. That's it. That's all I need.
Well, we're approaching 2 hours and 45 minutes. I think it's
Oh, yeah.
probably time for us to conclude this.
Yeah,
Unless
we
you
got
got
to
some
get
more
Paul
biting
to
you.
stop talking so much.
I know Paul's talking our heads off, aren't you, Paul?
Yeah.
I tried to get a word in every now and then, but I gave up on that. It's okay. I'll listen.
I've never come in contact, well, I think maybe once with reverse thread shear heads, but I find Honda are the hardest. Sometimes I've actually hit Honda so much that I almost cut through the fucking shear head. You know what I mean? Am I alone?
The last
Well,
Volkswagen I did, I drilled through the shear head bolts.
well, what I've learned on the
They were
on
like
the reverse thread
Loctited.
on the reverse thread Hondas, my best approach is actually all the way from the side. Instead of going down on an angle, I'll go straight sideways to catch the edge and move it that way. And it seems to work a lot better because when you drive down, because that flange is so wide, it kind of mushes down onto the bracket and doesn't want to move.
Yeah.
But if you go from the side, it'll break free the torque a whole lot faster.
It's fucking little things. It's crazy, The difference between 5 minutes and a fucking hour, I swear, is it's just a matter of how you angle a chisel. And I'll mention that real quick. I love to use wood chisels on shear head bolts because wood chisels will actually kind of malform into the shape of the shear head, and it will allow me to drive it inward. You know what I mean? I don't know how to describe it. It's sharp, it bites well, where like a steel chisel likes to glance off.
Oh yeah, and then once you're done, you throw it away, buy a new one cheap.
Exactly. Or you sharpen it, you run it on the angle grinder,
Well, sure.
repurpose it. So,
Well, everybody's gonna have their own special technique. If it works for you, god damn it, keep doing it.
I agree. Well, I say we cut it here, boys.
Just like Adam keeps wanting to use his graphite.
Yeah, Adam and his graphite. Adam Garrity.
Yeah.
And the multi-tool trick.
Oh, there you go. The multi-tool trick. There you go.
It's too bad he can't upload that video for us.
Ha.
Well, Andrew, it was a pleasure having you. Is there anything you want to say before you go?
Just keep it real. Do your best every job. Charge what you're worth, but be worth what you charge.
Let's wait until Eric pops on. He might have something left for you, okay?
Okay. There he is.
Hey, Eric, Andrew's about to jump. All right.
Yeah,
Andrew's about to jump off.
Andrew, all I gotta say is it was great to talk to you. I can't fucking wait to meet you in person. Me and Jareth will be there in person together.
What about me?
Hey,
you're welcome too, brother. Come on. I got
a new fridge in my workshop. I got the beer and everything else already stocked up. You want tequila? I got that too.
Yeah.
You have half a beer for me?
I
got some beer for you.
Hey,
it would be
I'll
fun.
bring the bourbon. You just supply the beer for these 2 sissies, and we're good.
Is marijuana legal in Virginia?
Yes, it is, and I actually have some sitting in the shop too.
Good, cool, badass.
Yes.
I find I have to smuggle it
is
through
the
the
one
airport.
hitter, so you better bring your own bong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Paraphernalia.
I have to smuggle it through the airport sometimes, like at Florida. And the funny part is I snuck cartridges of vape, like it looks like flux. So I shipped my soldering equipment and I hid those inside my flux. So it looked like flux. Now, I tell you, they didn't
you
suspect a
give me a
thing.
day's warning, I'll pick up a cheap phone for you, so
Yeah.
you don't have to try to smuggle it.
Well, dude, they
You
swabbed
just
my
gave away your
database.
secrets.
They
TSA's
swabbed-
on you now.
They swabbed my database. They thought my database was a bomb for some reason. Like they completely missed the mark. I was like, fuck. So
Don't they know that real bombs don't tick, they vibrate?
Right. Exactly.
well, it was a pleasure having you on here, old school. I
Thank
hope
you.
to see you some more. And I think that you have a lot to offer. And one day me, Eric, and Paul are gonna fly out, and I hope to record, that caveman knowledge of you that comes from the past that we never knew, and preserve it for the future generation. So
Oh, hell yeah.
Exactly.
yeah, so
Exactly.
Godspeed, Andrew. I look
We
forward to
can
talking
talk
to you some
about
more.
back in my day, we walked in the snow 2 feet uphill both ways, all that stuff.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
well, take care, brother. I appreciate it.
All righty.
All right, talk soon.
Okay. Bicycle.
Fucking awesome, huh?
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Eric, I think you're a little lit.
I am a little
A little bit.
just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little
We're gonna fuck with Paul now. Let's fuck with
Hey,
Paul.
but you know what though? I'm still confident. If somebody called me and I had a sober driver, I'd go fucking take a key to any car right now.
I think you would trip over yourself.
I don't think so. I think I will challenge you right there.
Goddamn, longest podcast yet. 2 hours and 47 minutes, gentlemen.
Yes,
We have
sir.
no lives.
Yes, sir. No, it's very good. It's hard to cut it short with somebody like Andrew Taylor.
It really is.
Yeah.
Does Paul partake?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
You have to define, like, what do you partake in, though?
Paul partakes in buying stuff that we can't buy.
And collecting tools that are rare.
Yeah.
That's what he partakes in.
He partakes in owning every fucking pack-a-punch that me and Jareth don't own.
Yeah, every time a pack-a-punch hits the market and we're too slow, which means, like, if we don't see it in 5 minutes, Paul will grab it.
I'm pretty sure Paul bought the one that I missed out on.
That's this one.
That's all.
Paul doesn't waste money on gambling, pot, or beer because he wants his money to go towards tools.
Exactly.
That's basically the gist of it. So he's addicted to shopping, and I'm addicted to, cannabis. I don't drink, really.
Eric, do you drink?
Eric, do you drink?
A little bit.
A little bit? God damn. Hey, he's got a decanter. That's sexy.
Decanter.
Is it lead-based?
I don't think so. I don't know a lot about it. My girlfriend's sister bought it for me for Christmas, and I've used it ever since. It holds my bourbon, and I'm good. It holds like 1.5 bottles, so it works pretty good.
Who's that guy who wanted to see my hammer? What was up with that? He asked publicly to see my hammer, guys.
I don't know.
And I showed it to him. I whipped it out. I showed it to you all.
Whip out that hammer, boy.
I showed it. It's there.
Yeah.
Well, gents, I say we cut it here. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed it. There's going to be another coming up next Saturday. Next Saturday is going to be Wayne Witten. So stay tuned for that, and we will see you guys then.
Our good buddy Wayne
Witten of Wayne's Lock Shop. And what else does he do?
WayneWitten.com.
John Wayne.
John Wayne.
Yeah.
He has that shop. And also there's more. So stay tuned. We'll be back next Saturday.
All right, guys.